Since birth, one intense aspiration consumed his spirit, conquering the ultimate summit of combat sports. Yet time unveiled a devastating truth. A mere human lifespan could never attain ultimate dominance. However, his intense fixation refused to merely fade away. This utter desperation pulled him toward a neglected legend, a heavenly dragon possessing a mythical golden fruit of eternal life. His grand campaign culminated in a blood-drenched confrontation against the massive protector creature. Ultimately, entering the holy refuge, his mouth fell open. The legendary golden artifact was not merely folklore. It existed right in front of him. Emitting an ethereal aura, it fascinated him. Fatigued, he fell onto the defeated behemoth, entirely mesmerized by the radiance. Regaining his poise, he approached the enchanted tree, absolute triumph coursing through his veins. This heavenly treasure would shape his final fate. Without a second consideration, he consumed the luminous reward. Catastrophic energy forcefully burst forth from his center. His body truly reformed itself. From that mythical instant, he transformed into Gilphus Eldragon, the unquestioned ultimate ruler of the domain. Yet the merciless flow of time ultimately diminished even this unbeatable giant. Confined to bed and weakening, his mourning lineage filled the quiet chamber. Everyone felt the iconic patriarch's approaching, unavoidable conclusion. Gilliam, his oldest successor, fervently clutched his delicate hand, silently imploring against fate. The powerful Eldragon patriarch ordered his son to suppress his tears. Destiny had merely summoned his name. Forcing a fractured smile, Gilliam murmured how vacant the enormous estate seemed without their mother. Losing him would utterly devastate them. But Gilphus vehemently insisted on fortitude over grief. As suffocating quietude swiftly descended, Gilphus mentally recalled that golden fruit. Maybe those ancient eternal life legends were completely fabricated after all. Nevertheless, enduring to create his remarkable family felt profoundly gratifying, a reality far greater than any legend. He confidently proclaimed a life entirely satisfied, no regrets left. Yet within, tormenting deceit brutally gnawed at his spirit. Standing at death's threshold, his fixation blazed intensely. Given one more century, he would entirely dominate the ultimate martial pinnacle. That unattainable pinnacle eternally mocking his reach. He vehemently grasped that unrefined aspiration as shadows ultimately seized him. Suddenly, existence completely fractured. His eyes abruptly snapped open. Total disorientation struck hard. Was that excruciating demise merely a short slumber? Strange surroundings instantly yelled incorrect. His limbs felt incredibly weightless, showing no similarity to his magnificent deathbed. Looking at his own palms, complete astonishment immobilized his mind. These small digits were not his. He had been reborn as a baby. The sheer ridiculousness of this existence struck him hard. For an unmatched combat god, this felt completely crazy. Total confusion swept over him. Who could possibly circumvent his celestial perceptions? Suddenly, an electric awareness struck the legendary fruit. The frightening reality harshly snapped. The legendary wealth did not halt aging. It activated total rebirth. While completely unforeseen, sheer ecstasy immediately surged through his small veins. Fate had truly bestowed upon him a fresh canvas to assert total dominance. His ultimate senses swiftly sensed nearby presence. Examining the structure and sentimental acknowledgement struck him like a colossal vehicle. The iconic L-Dragon property. Amazingly, he emerged right back into his own lineage. Scores of infants encircled his crib. While pondering this enormous baby assembly, attendants virtually marched inside clutching bottles. Yet swirling within was not formula, but horrifying crimson goo. Gilphus quietly watched them concocting this threatening crimson liquid, presuming a typical, though strange, feeding procedure was about to begin. Abruptly, a wailing infant goblin was forcefully pulled ahead. They mercilessly forced the enigmatic crimson fluid down its writhing throat. Immediately, horrific spasms seized the creature. Dazzling scarlet glow burst from its essence before it violently exploded into dreadful carnage. Complete immobility seized Gilfus' small form. Sheer terror engulfed his baby awareness. What sort of sinister ceremony was this household? Jogging? An attendant casually remarked that appropriate thinning rendered the lethal mixture bearable. While they methodically neared the adjacent cribs, hands abruptly lifted Gilfus aloft. Staring at the coming nozzle, his martial spirit trembled. An exceedingly monstrous, disastrous energy violently emanated from that vial. His mythical instincts immediately recognized the dreadful component: pure, unrefined dragon blood. Total toxin for a delicate newborn vessel. Yet evading was unfeasible as the silicone violently penetrated his small lips. Intuitively, his baby reflexes consumed. Catastrophic wild energy immediately surged through his tiny meridians. Excruciating tremors shook his bones. Yet Gilfus fully comprehended the stakes. The tumultuous primal nature of actual dragons now surged within him. A fatal wager, certainly, but concurrently an unparalleled cheat code: initial existence. Instincts urgently shouted to refuse the deadly liquid, vigorously battling the volatile atmosphere. However, an extremely conceited disclosure hit, overpowering this gigantic nature could eternally break his boundaries. Launching his capability far beyond his former peak, the ultimate summit suddenly appeared attainable, igniting his unyielding determination. He fiercely gulped the draconic potion. Scorching golden mana forcefully commandeered his circulatory system. However, his renowned combat-hardened mental resilience outright declined. To break. Never regarded me with disdain. His spirit fiercely bellowed. I stayed the unchallenged Gilfus L-Dragon. He clenched his jaw, overcoming that sheer torment. The servant merely gazed, completely immobilized with astonishment, as this infant gulped the deadly venom. A solitary drop signified immediate demise, yet he entirely defied destiny. Two opposing dragon auras collided fiercely within his small veins. As the champion surfaced, pure divine-level energy surged into little Gilfus. As those thundering energies merged into one, Gilfus perceived a mythical opportunity. He emptied the flask, lasting spirit, suffocating agony. Demise spurned him. Instead, his very genetic code altered, assimilating the tumultuous energy. He grinned, observing a couple of other infants truly endured. A mischievous little smile spread across his face, admiring the pure human survival instincts. But in spite of hoarding all this crazy mana, his newborn vessel was delicate. Fatigue overwhelmed him, sending the reincarnated dragon Monarch into a profound sleep. 7 years disappeared. That infant, now a complete monster named Zeke, had total zero boundaries. He tirelessly cranked out one-armed push-ups, balancing a huge rock. Striking rep 1000, he effortlessly propelled the hefty rock upward. Then he almost floated off the earth. Zeke, previously the renowned Gilfus L-Dragon, appreciated his own fearsome specifications. He understood this unrefined power originated from that ancient lineage throbbing through his blood. In this distorted age, society thought everyone contained an inner monocore. That infant nourishing ceremony unleashed catastrophic potential. The uncommon survivors inevitably transformed into utter beasts, leaving ordinary humans entirely in the dust. Within Zeke, this dragon-like aura blazed exponentially warmer. He was utterly persuaded his present base statistics surpassed his previous life's youth level. Additionally, he maintained the unique record of gulping an entire flask of pure dragon essence. Thanks to that crazy display, his physique altered beyond reason. Yet, in spite of this overpowering energy, he felt completely cheated. He was trapped as a 1-star beginner, even though his harsh effort warranted a 4-star rank. Stars literally determined your ultimate combat tier. The greater your star count, the more overpowered your abilities became, but advancing was sheer torment. Back in his peak, Zeke excelled at 10 stars. A god-level achievement literally no one else ever Moved. Time truly rushes. Zeke whispered internally. He was already 7 years old, a significant reduction from his centuries of governing. Turns out he was the unacknowledged successor to the L-Dragon Syndicate. His mother died young, and his irresponsible father was absent. The most outrageous plot twist. A complete millennium had disappeared since his rebirth. Civilization regressed into a brutal wasteland, where only supreme alphas endured. The definitive evidence of this grim period, that unrestrained custom of force-feeding infants unstable dragon blood. Subsequent to that arrived a deadly meat grinder referred to as the Dragon Trial. Only, the ultimate units who endured both horrors gained the privilege to top-tier combat instruction. Zeke officially met the criteria. Yet, whenever he questioned his supervisor about his absent mentor, she repeatedly delivered the same frigid justification. Classified information. Now reaching age 7, Zeke stayed completely self-educated, lacking any formal direction. The math wasn't adding up, given every other survivor had already begun their academy arcs. He was essentially isolated with this silent caretaker. Pressing her for specifics again, she merely evaded, questioning why he even protested. Zeke released a deep exhale. Maximizing his physical attributes took precedence at the moment. He could effortlessly self-learn martial arts afterward. Inquiring for any information concerning the other talents or his lineage, the servant obstructed him with complete quiet. Losing tolerance, Zeke shot her a lethal stare. "Are you ever going to cease the charade?" he snapped. She expectedly reiterated. Her scripted NPC conversation. "Isn't this actual torment?" Zeke whispered, pretending to be sorrowful. The maid icily declared she was simply carrying out instructions to ensure his fundamental existence. Amusingly enough, she was indeed a 3-star fighter, entirely able to instruct him in novice combat. But Zeke couldn't care less. After 7 lengthy years, her icy demeanor was normalized. Seeking adventure, Zeke plunged directly into the prohibited forest. The Guardian merely observed him disappear into the darkness. Zeke clicked his tongue, somewhat annoyed by her indifferent demeanor. Deep within, the old timberland choking gloom consumed the dwindling daylight. Without missing a step, Zeke nonchalantly removed extremely poisonous plants and directly consumed them. The taste was absolute garbage, but developing toxin immunity was essential for his intense regimen. Suddenly, a chilling change in the environment struck him. "Stay cool," he considered. A weighty, lethal stare fixed onto his back from the darkness, and the malevolent presence declined to fade. Exhaling sharply, Zeke entirely lost his tolerance with the stalking game. He confidently commanded the lurker to approach. Immediately, he disappeared, merging seamlessly into the wild vegetation. Crouched in stealth mode, Zeke monitored a suffocating infernal energy approaching. Gazing through the foliage, his eyes fixed on the objective. A colossal fury-driven wrath emerged. His eyebrows knitted tightly, scrutinizing the strange, tainted black vapor oozing from its flesh. He had truly never seen that variant. The enormous creature persisted feeding, entirely unaware of his existence. Boom! Zeke emerged from the darkness, startling the huge titan. Bellowing with wild rage, it plowed through directly toward him, but Zeke didn't waver. Instead, a menacing grin adorned his face. Combat time. The creature sprinted like a cargo train, yet Zeke almost vanished, evading it perfectly. At the same time, dazzling golden glow erupted around his knuckles. He released a destructive luminous blow that entirely penetrated directly through the creature's heavy armor. He laughed grimly. That crucial strike inflicted significantly more harm than estimated. Even firmly anchored at 1 star, his damage production was incredibly flawed compared to typical beginners. Easily lifting the enormous body over his shoulder, he desired an even more significant strength surge. The adrenaline faded, leaving him utterly drained. Overlooked by his lineage for 7 harsh years, he determined it was ultimately time to disappear and create his own mythical journey. Lurking in the pitch-dark shadows, A scout observed in utter astonishment. This unskilled one-star novice had just annihilated a gigantic boar with a single crushing blow. It entirely perplexed him that Zeke could detect his concealed presence. His mother had died, and his father, the complete clan chief, treated him like utter garbage. A forsaken son held no right to wield such immense power, yet carrying the leader's blood meant eyes followed his every action. Thus the scout's covert observation task. He profoundly doubted if this frightening concealed power originated directly from his father's ultimate commanding lineage. This untamed irregularity would be exhilarating to witness develop. Grinning, the enigmatic scout vanished entirely back into the pitch-black void. Inside his hut, Zeke pushed his scant possessions together. Getting ready to disappear, his honed instincts abruptly sensed enormous presences encircling his entrance. Why would high-ranking individuals pursue him? Pressing his ear against the timber, he eavesdropped as they casually conversed about the tranquil ambience. Sensing no lethal intent, he made his daring move. Swinging the hefty door wide open, he glared at them and straightforwardly asked for their purpose. The fighters recoiled in astonishment, noticing the mythical L-Dragon crest on their outfits. Zeke sighed, pondering what his miserable lineage desired today. Dropping into a courteous bow, their leader declared they had come to guide him to a compulsory clan trial. A test? Zeke sneered, sheer irritation burning in his eyes. It was sheer hypocrisy to insist on testing when they had practically never instructed him a single technique. Days went by, and Zeke stood before the enormous Grand Elder. Dragon Estate. Gazing at the grand design felt like entering a strange mirage. Yet acting the devoted son was not his style. A holy, varied concealed intention had truly pulled him back into this poisonous pit. A haughty staff member instantly obstructed his way, bluntly commanding the young master to remove his dirty travel garments before stepping onto their immaculate floors. The truth of his abrupt remembrance swiftly snapped into position. It all centered around an exclusive training facility known solely as the Dragon's Nest. For more than 1,000 years, the Eldragon Syndicate had managed this mythical academy. Securing entry was the supreme urgent dream of every clan successor. Coincidentally, the grand inauguration ceremony commenced today. Zeke understood he was truly pulled here to dominate the academies. Harsh compulsory entry trial. A heavy weight rested on his shoulders. He was entering unaware, possessing no information on contemporary clan dynamics or their rigid customs. Sour irritation surged over him like a tsunami. They interrupted his whole existence over a foolish exam. The strange timing made completely no sense. His luggage was ready to discover the immense unfamiliar and shape a mythical fate distant from their harmful shadow. Spacing out near the towering school gates, his pondering was interrupted when a shy child cautiously shuffled into his area. The anxious child Rangus softly inquired if he was okay, highlighting that Zeke appeared remarkably stressed. Blinking away his astonishment, Zeke asked for the child's name. Rangus clumsily introduced himself, confessing he only approached because Zeke's ominous presence appeared excessively uneasy. Zeke provided a cool reply while covertly examining the astonishingly powerful mana throbbing through the small child. For an individual so profoundly reserved, Rangus held alarmingly keen instincts. Lowering his defenses, Zeke genuinely expressed regret for zoning out and emanating such an uninviting somber aura. Disclosing his name, he candidly admitted that he was completely unaware concerning the workings of the forthcoming trial. Perspiring slightly at the reference to the gauntlet, Rangus comforted him that the Academy's challenges seldom altered their fundamental format from year to year. Hearing Zeke announce complete unawareness, Rangus nearly dropped his jaw. Charging into a life-changing clan evaluation with no plan was essentially a glamorous suicide mission. Before Rangus could divulge the crucial information, an irritating smirk broke the tranquility. A swaggering opponent marched over, forcefully labeling Rangus a pitiful failure. Sheer dread flickered in the enlarged eyes of Rangus. He immediately identified this horror. It was the infamous tormentor Retin. Displaying a menacing smile, Retin commanded the child to dash home before his bones got crushed, regarding him as complete garbage contaminating their atmosphere. Stammering fiercely, Rangus asserted he arrived to contend. Encroaching on his territory, Retin chuckled ominously, his gaze oozing with brutal malevolence and lethal purpose. Retin unleashed a harsh, wicked laugh. He proclaimed it was inconceivable for Rangus to ever endure before viciously disparaging his father as a worthless fake. Dragon. Rangus tightened his quaking hands, sheer fury igniting within. Zeke observed the strained situation quietly. This dispute revealed the merciless hierarchy ruling the Eldragon Empire. Reigning at the utmost summit of the younger generation were the superior beginner WELP dragons. Next ranked the ferocious warrior offspring dragons. Trailing them stood the experienced mature captains, and ruling over everyone sat the fearsome ancient elder dragons. Groveling at the complete bottom were the hated pseudo-dragons. These wretched outcasts were the unlucky defeats who got completely shattered by the dragon's lair, eternally marked as shattered anomalies. Yet Rangus nurtured a fierce aspiration. He pledged to demonstrate these discarded pariahs held the thundering spirits of genuine dragons. Entering the limelight, Zeke analyzed the tormentor's undeserved hubris. With icy composure, he inquired why Retin felt so blindly assured about the defeat. Retin spun around angrily, shouting at Zeke to identify himself and shouting out a challenge for an instant fight. Totally unfazed, Zeke upheld his chilly demeanor and coolly reiterated his question. He insisted on the genuine reasoning behind this pitiful tormentor's complete, unyielding confidence. Jabbing a finger at Rangus, Retin bellowed that the response was excruciatingly clear, labeling him a delicate failure. Zeke just angled his head, unimpressed. Zeke straightforwardly observed his aura perception confirmed Rangus truly emitted greater power. Rangus halted, gazing at him in complete astonishment. Nobody had ever protected his dignity like this. Meanwhile, the haughty crony's support Retin burst into fiery rage, completely unable to grasp. Zeke believed these thugs were gentler than a smuggled dragon. But before punches could soar, a significant player stepped onto the stage. It was the chief evaluator, shouting out that the harsh entrance assessments were formally commencing. He instructed the newcomers to line up and take their tags. Strolling away, Retin fired Zeke a deadly look, vowing he would not overlook this affront. Zeke released a weary exhale. In his thoughts, children nowadays were far too upset over trivial matters. Rangus anxiously indicated they were actually his age, adding that anyone would break if labeled completely worthless. A familiar grin pulled at the edge of Zeke's lips as he muttered a cool reply. This test was compulsory, so withdrawing merely was not a choice for them. But when Rangus dropped the bomb, that skipping was entirely permitted. Zeke appeared bewildered, demonstrating he was utterly out of the loop. Sweating profusely, Rangus pleaded with his friend to tap out before he got thoroughly destroyed out there. Zeke merely scoffed at the caution. A genius like him did not even comprehend the concept of fear. Rangus shook his head at this wild ego while Zeke just chuckled and hurried them toward the starting line. Sighing heavily, Rangus followed behind. Once at the venue, the examiner outlined their one fundamental goal. To endure this round, they merely had to inflict a single mark on the enormous rocks behind him. Personal equipment was prohibited. They could solely utilize Academy arms or their unprotected hands, receiving precisely 3 hits each. Zeke sighed in complete dismay, enduring a genuine dragon test. As a toddler made this appear like a total jest. He desired a genuine nightmare test, but this seemed like kids' amusement. The examiner then summoned the initial victim forward. A trembling novice seized a regular blade and struck at the massive stone with utterly all he possessed. A thunderous metallic shriek broke the quiet. Mouths fell open as the firm metal blade entirely broke in two. The forceful kickback aggressively surged up the handle, immediately fracturing the child's arm. Zeke observed, utterly dumbfounded. He never envisioned an admission test being this brutal. The boy crumpled, howling in sheer torment. Frigid, the examiner reminded him he still had 2 tries remaining, inquiring if he wished to continue. Since the novice was essentially immobilized, the examiner immediately disqualified him and commanded the medics to clear the ground. As they pulled the injured kid away, the subsequent number rang. Observing this complete devastation left Rangus trembling. Feeling profoundly irritated, Zeke turned to his friend, insisting to know what caused these foolish stones so perilous. Rangus stuttered that the masses immediately replenished. Worse, they reflected any kinetic energy straight back at you, amplified by 100. Zeke believed that was completely excessive for a simple exam, but Rangus asserted leaving a mark was indeed achievable. The secret was flawlessly embedding your internal energy before establishing physical contact. Zeke emitted a gentle sound of understanding. He ultimately comprehended that pure monocontrol entirely surpassed fundamental blade techniques in this particular test. Observing the frightened novices in queue, he wagered almost no one would endure this, particularly not those arrogant wealthy youths. As the massacre persisted, student after student faltered disastrously. Dozens were savagely smashed by the horrifying reflection sorcery. Abruptly, the examiner shouted Zeke's number. Glimmering, an icy smirk, he assuredly declared it was finally performance time. A frantic Rangus seized his shoulder, pleading with him one final time to just withdraw and remain secure. Advising him to relax, Zeke strutted directly toward the rock. Advancing the forefront, the inspector's eyes abruptly expanded. A frightening atmosphere began emanating from Zeke's form, seeping just a portion of his mythical previous existence strength. Presented a weapon. Zeke merely grinned and lifted his unadorned hands, asserting fists were sufficient. The whole audience gasped. No one thought a defenseless child could possibly make a single mark on that legendary boulder. They were determined to see his bones shatter on impact. Observing from the sidelines, Rangus was hyperventilating with fear. That absolute dread swiftly transformed into self-loathing, desiring he had literally pulled his friend away from this fatal endeavor. The proctor lowered his hand, indicating the beginning. Zeke nonchalantly walked up to the massive stone and felt its surface. He momentarily admired this old artifact, but swiftly discarded those thoughts. Aside, since none of it was significant anymore. Channeling volatile mana, dazzling light flared around his tightened hand. Meanwhile, Rangus was genuinely trembling in complete fright. But Zeke's blood was coursing with pure adrenaline. This was his initial genuine opportunity to unleash his complete limits. This magical stone was the ultimate striking. Sack. Suddenly, Rangus's tear-filled gaze snapped, broadly ajar in absolute terror. Emitting a thunderous war shout, Zeke exploded his signature explosion struck directly into the unbreakable surface. A disastrous shockwave erupted on collision. As whirlwinds of dirt and broken stone burst outward, a shocked Rangus urgently protected his face. As the debris ultimately settled, the evaluator's jaw nearly struck the ground, his eyes entirely fixed to the astonishing aftermath. Zeke relaxed in the exact middle of the complete devastation, flexing a wildly pleased grin. He casually noted his legendary method was still far too unruly to manage flawlessly. Chuckling at his own severely damaged hand, he realized his final training phase was only just commencing. The remainder of the audience halted in complete stillness, their minds completely malfunctioning, attempting to comprehend this unthinkable display. Retin, in the meantime, appeared fiercely activated, completely denying to acknowledge that Zeke nonchalantly broke the sacred test stone. An enigmatic woman in the quiet crowd displayed a faint grin, immediately captivated by Zeke's incredible energy. While the whole room remained immobilized by sheer astonishment, our primary character utterly disregarded the oppressive ambience, freezing and anticipating his ultimate score. The examiner stayed entirely malfunctioning. That restoring artifact was specifically crafted to endure blows from elite-level masters, not novices. Yet this child defied existence. The evaluator hurriedly whispered about Zeke's honorable standing, inquiring if his colossal power emerged from a mythical heritage. That destructive technique also ignited immense déjà vu abruptly. An eager yell from Zeke entirely broke the evaluator's stupor. Insisting on his formal score, Zeke jolted the invigilator out of his anxiety, compelling the man to ultimately announce a passing score. Instantly, a second representative stepped up, throwing Zeke a small container swirling with enigmatic green energy. Zeke inquired about the radiant contents, but the haughty official merely glared intensely and shouted at him to leave. Zeke frowned completely over this timeline's sleazy behaviors. Before he could unleash a retort, a hyper Rangus dashed over, amplifying his truly divine performance. Flashing a smug smile, Zeke dismissed the monumental display as trivial before inquiring about the radiant liquid. Rangus disclosed it was a superior potion from the mythical Eldragon clan. Zeke gradually reiterated the name. Rangus enthusiastically nodded. Considering his tumultuous family saga, Zeke momentarily doubted a harmful murder scheme, but his complete faith in Rangus prevailed. He believed this truly was a high-level spiritual enhancement. This celestial concoction was meticulously created from extraordinarily high-quality uncommon yields. The equation required legendary plants gathered exclusively from entirely unexplored, lethal concealed domains. It was intensely energized with the pure essence of ghostly and celestial level creatures. This supreme trick object could immediately erase persistent harm while permanently enhancing the user's fundamental attributes. Its outrageous crafting challenge rendered it nearly legendary. Consuming the sap, Zeke was utterly astonished by its dramatic immediate healing surge. He wondered if this was authentic spiritual remedy. Rangus totally overlooked the archaic terminology, merely bragging that their faction's potions surpassed all others. Rangus then playfully inquired if the prestigious clan enhancement truly blew his mind. Zeke nodded, excited. It immediately erased his intense training exhaustion and severe injuries, though he subtly observed his monocore did not advance. Rangus asserted Zeke's extraordinary ability was considerably more surprising. Zeke merely laughed mischievously, informing his bro to relax. Internally, Zeke wondered at how incredibly alchemy and fighting expertise had progressed over the past 1,000 years. As Rangus kept promoting his unrefined might, Zeke passionately asserted his final fate was to seize the complete summit of power. Instance later, the examiner verified Retton's hazardous team also passed the test. Zeke entirely anticipated that result from his opponent. But when Rangus' digit finally fell, the guy was truly trembling. Suppressing his immense apprehension, Rangus urged through the anxiety and clumsily walked to the strike zone, unaware of his friend's stage fright. Zeke bellowed loudly, shouting at Rangus to unleash his inner beast. Flushing red, Rangus desperately silenced him. Taking a huge breath, he seized his selected weapon and secured into his combat position. At the keen signal, Rangus burst ahead, releasing a frantic blow against the artifact. Sadly, his feeble strike lacked any genuine presence. A harsh failure. Desperate, he prepared for round 2. This time, his weapon violently rebounded off the impenetrable target. The immense recoil instantly broke his balance, sending him tumbling pathetically into the soil. His hold trembled violently, not from fear, but entirely shattered by the savage rebound. Retton's team burst into poisonous laughter. They mercilessly derided his father's heritage, insisting Rangus relinquish his aspiration. Shooting Zeke a hittable grin, Retton ruthlessly inquired if this complete failure was the mastermind he excitedly perpetually hurling insults. Fixing his gaze with lethal purpose, Zeke icily commanded the tormentor to close his filthy mouth. The supervisor emotionlessly reminded Rangus he had one last chance left. Submerged in extreme embarrassment and the harmful taunts of the crowd, Rangus entirely stiffened. He merely lowered his head in embarrassment. Unexpectedly, Zeke marched over, intensely interrogating his bro's behavior. He forcefully interrogated why a natural spear user was sadly swinging a sword. Zeke intensely probed him for outfitting entirely incompatible equipment and hurrying a boss-level test blind. Retin displayed a wicked smirk, completely relishing Zeke, savagely mocking his own companions utterly miserable and entirely cursed combat plan. The poisonous tormentors burst into frenzied laughter, branding Zeke a total fool. They harshly insulted that Rangus solely wielded a sword just because his outdated father imposed that ineffective technique onto him. The detractors sneered, asserting a weapon exchange signified nothing. Zeke tuned out their miserable trash talk completely. Pivoting around, he confirmed if a gear change was lawful. The examiner granted him the go-ahead. Grinning, with complete assurance, Zeke proclaimed Rangus had hit pay dirt, redirecting his fierce stare fixed on, inquiring, "Do you have faith in me?" Memories of every spirit-breaking affront towards his father inundated Rangus' mind. Clenching his teeth, a fierce, burning defiance sparked within his eyes. Standing upright, Rangus bellowed his complete conviction. He would engage in battle brandishing the spear. Following Zeke's guidance, Rangus revealed a distressing family ordeal about his father not managing to penetrate the dragon's lair. That crushing loss marked their lineage with shame, diminishing his father to a ridiculed so-called false dragon. Yet ingesting that poisonous shame quietly, his father gave up everything, just to elevate Rangus with genuine devotion. That holy recollection created a blood pledge. He would awaken his genuine dragon heritage. Surging with monumental determination, he fiercely clutched the spear. Today he'd annihilate those harmful whispers eternally. A blade was completely ineffective now. Instead, he wagered his whole fate on Zeke's grand scheme. One deadly defect persisted. His spear expertise was virtually non-existent. Sensing that alarm, Zeke indicated directly at a magical monolith. Zeke instructed him to eliminate all reasoning and just penetrate that rock. With all he had, intense uncertainty crept back in. That self-repairing relic was renowned for being entirely unbreakable. But Zeke owned an indisputable game-altering presence. Having someone truly trust in his capability felt remarkably exhilarating. Crushing his persistent anxieties, Rangus went all out. Relying on Zeke completely, he ultimately unlocked complete trust in his own concealed capability. Directing his energy into the beam, a gigantic alien. Energy surged. Years of blade training never ignited such a crazy explosive power output. The spear felt effortlessly instinctive. Unleashing a horrifying battle cry, Rangus struck the monolith with god-tier strength. From the sidelines, the haughty Retin guffawed, convinced a simple weapon exchange was a pitiful, worthless trick. But the spear echoed with his very spirit, becoming an extension of his physique. Yelling solely on instinct, he propelled forward with cataclysmic force. The blade completely shattered the mystical barrier. Piercing clear through Retin's team, immediately dropped their jaws in complete mind-boggling terror. Even the stone-faced overseers gasped in sheer wonder. He hadn't merely chipped the relic. He completely fractured its essence. Zeke excitedly cheered him on. Meanwhile, Rangus stayed utterly still, entirely immobilized by his own monumental newly awakened power. The examiner's resounding voice formally announced his triumph. Still shell. Stunned, Rangus vacantly murmured, inquiring if he truly endured the ordeal. Flashing a signature smile, Zeke threw an arm around him, confirming the truth. An overpowering tsunami of complete elation engulfed Rangus. Tackling Zeke into a gigantic embrace, he chanted his triumph endlessly. Retin's team practically short-circuited in pure unmistakable denial. Yelling it was a malfunction, Retin quaked with furious, blinding anger, violently dismissing Rangus's total supremacy. The supervisor loudly concluded the harsh test period, announcing the official induction ceremony would begin promptly without hesitation. Is that truly it? Zeke inquired, Rangus affirmed, although his instincts shouted that much more perilous challenges were silently waiting ahead. Deep within the dragon's nest right then, a foreboding group appeared from the pitch black, suffocating darkness of the hallway. Entering the blinding illumination, the proctor proudly declared the ultimate patriarch of the Eldragon lineage coming to favor the newcomers. Zeke fixed his lethal stare on the leader. "Who's the frigid antagonist over there?" he murmured. Sweating profusely, Rangus gasped out that it was the elder. Zeke continued prodding, inquiring why the man bore such a frigid, completely lifeless, kill-like stare. Frantic, Rangus struck a cover Zeke's mouth, urgently begging for quiet. Zeke offered a grave nod as Rangus breathed out and released, scrutinizing the elites. Zeke immediately sensed the monstrous presence emanating from the Eldragon leaders. These were robust 6-star creatures and frightening 7-star myths. Their piled spiritual force actually amazed Zeke. The patriarch himself, Balsa Dragon, was a complete anomaly of nature possessing an ultra-rare 8-star expertise. 1,000 years ago, that divine tear was nearly a legend. Zeke mentally assessed how many contemporary beasts truly had that extraordinary quality. "I genuinely dislike this guy's aura," Zeke muttered. While Rangus hurriedly hushed him, Zeke inwardly acknowledged, "I never anticipated this despot was my real biological parent." A stifling pitch-dark haze oozed from Balsa, immediately suffocating the room's ambience. Beneath, an intolerable gravity-defying burden. The proctor urgently insisted on complete quiet, cautioning that master Balsa was getting ready to speak to them. The powerhouse advanced, his voice booming like thunder. He instructed the rookies to truly become the flesh and bone of their empire. Immediately, his uttered phrases intensified the room's oppressive atmosphere to a lethal degree. While Zeke effortlessly dismissed the strain, the nearby cadets violently trembled in sheer dread, literally struggling for air under that burdensome god-tier pressure. Zeke swiftly noticed Rangus literally bending under the extreme spiritual weight. It profoundly baffled Zeke how the patriarch could psychologically shatter individuals with merely his passive presence. Furthermore, Zeke sensed a primal, toxic loathing swirling fiercely within Balsa's spiritual energy. That grim revelation only intensified Zeke's profound disdain for his own so-called father. As Balsa pivoted away, another enigmatic figure surged immediately, capturing everyone's complete focus. Sporting vibrant blonde hair and a completely cheerful energy, he threw Balsa a brief appreciation. "The master is anticipating sheer excellence from each and every one of you." While Zeke internally pondered the stranger's identity, the blonde guy kept it concise. "No tedious speeches here, just a straightforward command grind, tough level up and become monsters." An evaluator blinked, astonished by the swift conclusion. The blonde fellow just grinned, jesting that lengthy addresses only provoke significant anxiety. These Eldragon aristocrats were truly peculiar, Zeke observed. Nevertheless, that oppressive intense strain entirely disappeared from the chamber. The assessor's voice resonated, announcing the eagerly awaited dorm placements. Zeke pivoted, pondering if their whole team would ultimately collide in the precise same location. Rangus described the arrangement, for separate dormitories were located east, west, south, and north. Destiny distributed the newcomers throughout those 4 areas. Hearing his digit resonate, Zeke jumped up, throwing Rangus a very laid-back wave farewell. East Hall was his new territory. Walking down the hallways, nostalgia struck him intensely. An insane quantity of things had developed over his 1,000-year absence. Finally locating his door, he murmured about the perplexing arrangement. His new housemate was certainly already relaxing inside. Shoving the sturdy oak door open, he displayed an inviting, radiant grin at his enigmatic roommate. He effortlessly expressed regret for his tardiness, declaring they were officially roommates. From this instant onward, plot twist of the era. Sitting right there was freaking Rangus. A true eruption of laughter erupted from Zeke's torso. Destiny was nearly teasing them at this stage. Laughing, Zeke nonchalantly inquired if the Academy had any additional harsh events planned for today. Rangus verified the genuine torturous training commenced tomorrow morning. Zeke just shrugged, pretending utter disinterest. Rangus gazed utterly astonished. Did Zeke zone out the evaluator entirely? Without skipping a beat, Zeke unabashedly admitted he hadn't heard a single word. Sighing deeply, Rangus advocated for an early curfew before tomorrow's harsh toil. Hours later, immersed in moonlight, Zeke gazed intently out his dorm window. His thoughts wandered to his ultimate objective, escaping this prestigious family, to investigate the immense realm. Yet the test's chaos uncovers altered everything. That astonishing healing gem and that supercharged elixir, they suggested astonishing secrets he never anticipated. To solve this enormous thousand-year enigma, participating and remaining with the lineage briefly wasn't merely clever. It was absolutely essential. Bam! One harsh month immediately disappeared. The institution's routine toil intensified into pure unblemished torment. Novices were now compelled to perform impeccable techniques while grasping absurdly weighty iron dumbbells. A tough instructor shouted commands energizing the renowned Dragon's Breath method, the ultimate masterwork, created by the 15th Patriarch himself. Total mastery was non-negotiable. Yet mid-speech, the teacher's severe gaze fixed on a group of absolute prodigies dominating the task. One highlight was the fierce Master Laika. She had already mastered the breathing method effortlessly. Her fiery presence practically shouted she was approaching a significant boost. But then another wild scene seized the instructor's gaze, rendering him completely voiceless. It was freaking Zeke. He wasn't just holding dumbbells. He was effortlessly balancing enormous rocks on his head and limbs. Shaking, the astonished instructor murmured that Zeke definitely held the frightening pure lineage of the Patriarch. But pause. Zeke had no official instruction on file. This ridiculous, unrefined strength contradicted all reason. Honestly, even Zeke was internally freaking out right now. His ancient method had supposedly advanced. Now, this altered version was being openly instructed to every single lower branch member. He understood the fundamental truth. Breathing methods literally absorbed the world's unrefined mana to create superhuman power. Effectiveness greatly depended on innate genetic ability. That's precisely why noble lineages vigorously protected these revered practices from ordinary people. Examining the newcomers, Zeke recognized this contemporary edition was remarkably secure and foolproof. However, it concealed one enormous critical flaw. It absolutely demanded remaining completely motionless. For him, that rendered it completely worthless trash. His initial 1,000-year-old technique consistently drew energy during rapid motion. It was incredibly deadly in actual warfare but famously unfeasible to master. Someone evidently simplified his legendary craft for widespread consumption. Yet he reluctantly acknowledged this reduction significantly enhanced the whole clan's fundamental strength. A strange, comforting surge of pride enveloped him. Who knew the informal abilities he created 1,000 years ago would turn into their contemporary basis? Did his other god-level methods quietly endure the trial of time, as well? A mischievous little grin appeared on his face. Intriguing, he murmured. Meanwhile, from the darkness, Laika's piercing stare fixed intensely onto him. Cut to the tumultuous cafeteria. Mouths were genuinely falling open. The nearby students observed in utter dread at Zeke's monstrous hunger. While devouring his heap of food, he observed Rangus slouched over the table, hardly grazing his own dish. Zeke probed his gloomy aura, asserting that genuine strength demands outrageous calories. Rangus simply struck him with a flat response inquiry. Wasn't Zeke somewhat unsettled by his own bizarre endurance? Zeke just sneered. Getting muscular was straightforward arithmetic. Just consume more nourishment. He encouraged Rangus to work harder and surpass his boundaries, thrusting a huge drumstick his direction. Rangus promptly refused, asserting he was utterly full. Chewing away, Zeke contemplated how some newcomers showcased such remarkable combat skills before even arriving on this campus. Suddenly, a self-assured figure approached. Their chaotic table. It was the genius Laika, gazing at him intently. She daringly commended his remarkable performance. Oozing with complete assurance, she uttered, but Zeke merely blinked. "Who are you?" he stated flatly, causing Rangus to literally gasp on his meal. "Are you crazy?" Rangus spat in sheer terror. "How do you not identify her? That is Master Laika, the Patriarch's own kin." Zeke merely shrugged, completely unfazed, still drawing a blank. Chilly perspiration soaked Rangus, pleading with Zeke to abandon the laid-back demeanor. "She is truly the top contender to inherit the whole clan," he emphasized. Unperturbed, Zeke revealed a shocking truth. "I am the Patriarch's child as well, even if I am not legitimate." Rangus, completely halted, mind short-circuiting. Laika, nonetheless, abruptly gazed at Zeke with unmistakable fascination. Her stare intensified. "Is that a truth?" she questioned. "Are you genuinely the Patriarch's concealed lineage?" This was Laika Typhoon Eldragon, a hereditary genius fated to govern the Empire. "Why, would I pretend that?" Zeke sneered. Laika leaned in near eyes, narrowing. "Then how did a simple, illegitimate pariah break?" An awakened enchanted gem using just bare hands. She examined him, perplexed by such immense strength from a humble lineage. "Because I am me," he declared effortlessly, promptly returning to his food. "Consume, Rangus." For a taut moment, complete stillness engulfed the table. Then a malicious grin curled across Laika's lips. "You are incredibly intriguing," she purred, elegantly taking the vacant seat right beside him. Without reluctance, she presented him a unique position as her private front. Zeke raised a solitary eyebrow, silently probing her motive. "Join my group," she announced confidently. "Pledge your complete allegiance to me, and I will become your supreme protector." She grinned, stating that every illegitimate offspring urgently needs superior support. "Grant me your immense power to seize the Patriarch's seat," she ordered. "Once I unavoidably take complete command of the clan, I will fulfill your most fervent desires." Without skipping a single beat, Zeke cut her off. "No." Laika's arrogant exterior instantly shattered. Her brows furrowed in sheer annoyance. "Why dismiss me? Are you silly enough to desire the throne yourself?" As she questioned him, a stifling atmosphere began fiercely crackling around her body. Zeke effortlessly perceived she was positioned on the definite edge of awakening. A frightening accomplishment for her age, yet Zeke didn't even blink. He simply exhaled, "Accept whatever wild hypothesis you wish. But I genuinely could not care less about elaborate labels or crowns." Laika's voice fell to complete zero. "Why?" she questioned. Bam! Zeke abruptly drove his sword deep into the wooden table, causing Laika to noticeably flinch. Gazing directly into her eyes, he proclaimed with indisputable complete assurance, "I submit to entirely. No one." He inclined forward, "Because I am already the most powerful being alive." The packed hall went completely silent. Even the genius, Laika, stood frozen, attempting to grasp the frightening surge of energy bursting forth from him. For one fleeting moment, his gigantic presence completely shattered her spirit. Freaking out, Rangus urgently leaped between them, pleading for tranquility. But Laika's pride was broken. Burning with complete embarrassment and seething fury, she fiercely insisted on an official duel. Zeke, entirely unbothered by her lethal stare, merely disregarded her. He nonchalantly continued munching his food as if nothing had even occurred. The academy immediately erupted with wild speculation. Groups of students hurriedly murmured that the prestigious Master Laika was advancing toward the arena for a savage deathmatch. Onlookers inhaled sharply in utter astonishment, fervently questioning what sort of complete maniac was reckless enough to challenge the renowned Typhoon lineage. As all gathered, the training ground, the electric ambience violently hummed with endless chatter, desperately attempting to pinpoint her enigmatic target. Meanwhile, Zeke exhaled, truly perplexed that this insane girl was indeed instigating a confrontation. "Are you really doing this?" Rangus nearly wailed, reminding him he was confronting a genuine beast. Zeke just blankly gazed back, reiterating he had no idea who she was. Rangus forcefully facepalmed, pleading Zeke to show basic regard since they shared the patriarch's lineage. As Zeke completely disregarded the caution, Rangus forcefully seized him, insisting he truly honor his formidable opponent's heritage. "She is the patriarch's ultimate creation," Rangus shouted. "She genuinely possesses the sacred, fearsome blood of the legendary Typhoon clan, one of the 4 supreme pillars." He praised her as an unmatched prodigy who flawlessly mastered their deadly secret sword techniques. When she was nearly a toddler, Zeke just angled his head, completely confused. "So she is the employer's child. That is all I obtained." Rangus' jaw entirely dropped. "How do you endure being this unaware?" he yelled. Zeke merely offered a sluggish half-smile, responding truthfully. "Cease worrying about trivial specifics, dude." Rangus stood completely immobilized, his mind utterly shattered. Then entirely out of the blue, Zeke laughed ominously. A savage smile spread across his face. "Entering completely unaware, that just makes defeating them 10 times more exhilarating." Rangus slouched over his spirit, departing his physique. In his thoughts, Zeke's insane power signified nothing against Lika's divine-level status. "Why even agree to this fatal mission?" he moaned. Zeke's gaze sparkled with sheer fighting desire. "I never evade a confrontation. Additionally, my target appears keen to begin." Across the soil, Lika stood like a complete conqueror. Her massive sword plunged into the ground. Frightening bolts of deadly blue lightning violently erupted around her figure. "Are you at last finished crafting justifications?" She spat with chilling venom. Tapping her handle, she restlessly insisted they start. Directly confronting her furious tempest, Zeke merely nodded, completely at ease. Completely engulfed by pure fright, Rangus stumbled backward, falling over his own legs before dashing. "For his existence, just do not perish." His frantic shout reverberated backward. Zeke turned his attention to Lika, his eyes gleaming with true intrigue. He wondered why she was so fixated on bringing him down. Standing proud, Lika let her intense aspiration bellow. She proclaimed her ultimate objective was seizing the throne of the Eldragon lineage. To obtain that crown, she needed to defeat Zeke and compel his unwavering loyalty. Honestly, this outrageous assertion left Zeke completely perplexed. How precisely would defeating him guarantee her that enormous strength? Lika just gazed back, her visage contorted in sheer utter incredulity. She scoffed, inquiring if he was genuinely this oblivious about their struggling family dynasty. She sneered brazenly, questioning if his blind naivety arose from being some humble, illegitimate pariah. Unperturbed, Zeke bluntly rejected her severe accusation. He calmly admitted his comprehension of their poisonous lineage conflict was virtually zero. Observing his sincere ignorance, Lika explained it. She disclosed that precisely 5 selected heirs, including themselves, were presently engaged in this conflict. They were contending for total dominance. She mentioned that every single sibling except him maintained strong connections to the 4 mythical primary branches. The Patriarch designation carried such frightening power that it ignited a merciless full-scale conflict between these enormous factions. To endure her formidable brothers in this slaughter, she urgently desired top-tier heavy hitters. Zeke immediately understood this enormous, disorganized faction conflict was ripping the legendary branches apart. The entire tumultuous situation shouted complete headache, and he desired utterly no involvement in. Lika insisted that declaring an heir must significantly enhance both fundamental combat attributes and political supremacy by accumulating devoted pawns. No hesitation, she abruptly surged ahead, charging at Zeke like a thundering missile. She yelled she would break his ego right now and forcefully pull him into her faithful army. Yet flowing like real water, Zeke effortlessly glided past her destructive slash. He perfectly glided through her intense combination of quick-fire strikes. But Lika blazed with sheer fierce resolve, unwilling to lessen her chaotic, suffocating force. The dispersed onlookers just gazed in utter, jaw-dropping astonishment. Their eyes entirely struggled to follow the blazing streaks, amazed by their god-tier swiftness. Lika swung her enormous, beastly sword with a frightening grace, making steel appear like paper. Her deadly blows linked together seamlessly. In this savage sibling confrontation, murmurs of sheer excitement surged through the astonished audience. Observing her energy ignite and velocity surge, everyone essentially wagered their lives on her certain victory. But behind the ostentatious excitement, a poisonous fury was swiftly simmering within Lika. Her thoughts whirled, completely incapable of understanding why. Zeke continued gliding through her flawless kill shots as if it were child's play. Disgusting, frustrating awareness started gnawing at her mind. He was entirely ridiculing her from the darkness. In the meantime, the genuine terror of Rangus swiftly transformed into complete wide-eyed enthusiast excitement. The cool, impeccable footwork of Zeke astonished his total mind. Shattering the quiet, Zeke remarked her fighting tempo was exquisitely distinctive. He complimented her incredible speed, confessing she completely surpassed ordinary novices at her present level. Annoyed, Lika snapped at him to be quiet and honor the damn match. Zeke simply tightened his hold, perilous energy crackling through his muscles. He icily murmured he was completely secured. He nonchalantly mentioned that intense tunnel vision caused him to inflict total destruction without exerting any effort. Bam! His ferocious fist linked perfectly. The savage shockwave truly tore the oxygen from her torso, causing her to gasp violently. She immediately crumbled down to the frigid earth, clutching her weapon feebly while firmly embracing her wailing center as intense pain immobilized her whole nervous system. The entire crowd inhaled frightened breaths, erupting into frenzied whispers. They desperately wondered how Zeke evaded that frightening onslaught, and what creature hid within this unnamed child, trembling. Lika compelled herself upright, profoundly shaken. She certainly understood her velocity obliterated fundamental scrubs. In her tear pleading to uncover his hidden cheat code, Zeke effortlessly concurred. Her crazy agility effortlessly broke every record he was aware of. But then he mercilessly abandoned reality. To his god-level vision, she stayed a fundamental 1-star beginner. Lika savagely growled. He was also rated 1 star, indicating he had completely no right tracking. Her unfazed Zeke effortlessly disclosed the fundamental technique behind downloading her complete combat pattern, interpreting her frantic breath, quivering pupils, and the subtle tension in her calves. By thoroughly examining those pitiful little signs, he grinned. He entirely charted her upcoming attacks. Sheer seasoned battle expertise. Losing her freaking mind, Lika screamed. He was completely faking and recklessly shot a frantic supersonic death strike. Yet Zeke, emitting sheer contempt, simply moved securely out of peril. Flashing an arrogant grin, he murmured that her whole spirit was essentially an open volume. Without a single moment of doubt, he struck her with a devastating counter-hook. The dynamic explosion literally propelled Lika, soaring into the firm concrete barrier. Utterly frantic screams tore from the frightened peanut gallery. Had the unyielding genius truly been defeated? Rangus completely lost his sanity yelling. Celebrating the wild, upset Zeke, however, maintained his cool demeanor and sharply adjusted the excitement. Cautioning this boss confrontation was still inhaling. This cursed dance was just beginning. As the thick debris cleared, Lika pulled her bruised body upward, bleeding but emanating complete defiance. Zeke immediately recognized her obstinate, unyielding presence. He understood she intuitively ignited her central aura as a barrier, entirely absorbing the deadly impact of his lethal strike. A perilous grin shaped his lips as he ultimately granted her admiration. This girl was a complete generational beast. Rangus desperately pleaded with Lika to halt the slaughter, but Zeke icily commanded him to move aside. "You will be caught in the crossfire," he cautioned. Suddenly, Zeke's eyes flew wide open. A gigantic surge of energy burst forth. From Lika's essence. Had she merely shattered through to the two-star domain? The throng inhaled in sheer astonishment. A luminous glow blossomed across her complexion like enchantment. The undeniable evidence of a two-star emergence. A dazzling pure white. Aura entirely enveloped her. This crucial phase allows fighters to imbue pure mana into their blows, appearing as a tangible lethal aura. Lika's eyes ignited with newfound authority. Thanks to you, I have risen to two-star, she bragged. Much sooner than intended, her frigid stare fixed on to him. With this crazy energy surge, she vowed his downfall was certain. Her pale aura surged as she thrust her great sword, oozing with lethal energy. Zeke didn't even flinch. Instead, a wild, excited laugh burst from him. You have truly advanced. Pure adrenaline surged through his veins. He effortlessly evaded her dazzling combo, completely thrilled by her incredible speed. Abruptly, his grin disappeared. A razor-keen pain cut his cheek, leaving a heated path of new blood. Zeke was astonished. He flawlessly evaded that. A cruel, victorious smirk spread across Lika's face. Beginning to sense the enormous divide between us, she mocked. She confidently declared, this was her final shape, unlocked solely by defeating the two-star domain and expressing her essence. He was about to sample the mythical Thunder Greatsword. Zeke's psychotic smile only expanded broader. Observing an invisible combat technique firsthand, he was entirely electrified with excitement. His eyes nearly radiated. This confrontation was swiftly transforming into the most legendary adrenaline-fueled moment of the whole duel. Lika burst into action. Crackling golden electricity consumed her sword as she raced ahead, dazzling the whole arena. The fierce electrical tempest struck Zeke unexpectedly, causing him to stumble. Completely taken by surprise, he shouted, in sheer astonishment, "What type of shattered lightning method is that? Discuss overkill for a training match." Lika just grinned, slamming her enormous blade into the ground. Drenched in golden energy, she absorbed his fear and started charging her next destructive move. She shouted her attack name. A deadly luminous spiderweb of high-voltage electricity burst from below, pursuing Zeke, but he perfectly backflipped to safety. Hitting the ground, Zeke understood her power scaling was off the charts. This was going to be an intense boss battle. The throng hummed frantically. Lika's revival had entirely turned the narrative. Rangus was perspiring profusely. However, Zeke observed her fundamental footwork stayed essentially unchanged. Her blows were simple, yet every strike unleashed disastrous power. That golden lightning was sheer terror fuel. Even her velocity was crazy now. This peculiar lightning felt archaic, completely distinct from any typical magic. Still, Zeke passionately believed he could oppose her. Her strange elemental power only ignited his curiosity. Navigating through her continuous onslaught, Zeke engaged his battle mind. He mercilessly analyzed her assault patterns. Lika frowned at Zeke's arrogant, effortless evasion. You are far too relaxed for someone on the verge of dying. She hurried him again, a literal golden meteor. Igniting a concealed craft, she transformed into a lightning strike and sliced. Zeke scarcely glided past the blade. Her velocity was genuinely matching the pace of real lightning. But she ruthlessly deceived him, altering her path. This occasion, frigid metal made destructive contact. The overwhelming force propelled him like a projectile into a huge dust cloud. Rangus panicked, sprinting ahead, but an onlooker held him back. As the haze dissipated, Zeke pulled himself up. His equipment was charred, but his combat spirit blazed more intensely. Lika hit once more, achieving a direct score. Blank lightning explosion. Amazingly, Zeke absorbed it. Lika's jaw fell at his monstrous bizarre resilience. Rangus shouted, racing onto the combat zone. He yelled for clemency, pleading that she had already demonstrated her complete supremacy. Lika shot him a lethal stare. Restraining insults his fighter pride, Rangus frantically pleaded Zeke to surrender. Beg on your knees and vow allegiance to survive, Lika insisted. Zeke simply grinned, a wicked, haughty smirk, remaining completely mute. Her gaze became lethal, still maintaining that pitiful Lorigon arrogance. She scoffed, lifting her enormous sword. Her energy fiercely broadened. She pledged to utterly obliterate him with one ultimate full-strength blow. Unleashing her prohibited craft, Heaven's Thunder, the sky tore apart. A colossal column of golden verdict descended from the heavens. The cataclysmic collision vaporized the arena ground surrounding Zeke. Infinite thunderbolts poured down like a lethal golden meteor shower. Battering the barrier, Rangus howled. In complete terror, he stood entirely immobilized, observing powerless, as dazzling golden lightning engulfed his companion. Searing smoke surged upward. Lika struck her searing blade down. The fierce confrontation appeared completely over. Breathing out deeply, she murmured with unmistakable compassion that the contest ended. Abruptly, a eerily smooth voice resonated. Is that a truth? A frightening golden electric glow erupted straight from Zeke's twisted figure. Lika spun around, jaw utterly dropped. She frantically stammered out, inconceivable, questioning how he unfastened an electric aura. Penetrating the mist, Zeke stood smiling effortlessly. Luminous energy sparked everywhere, mischievously asking if this qualified as lightning. He merely shrugged openly, confessing he unknowingly stumbled upon it. His cool demeanor sent complete shockwaves across the stunned audience. Lika breathlessly whispered unfeasible once again, entirely struggling to comprehend reality. Smirking sharply, Zeke disclosed he deliberately sabotaged her crushing strikes to examine her distinctive voltage. Somehow, he literally replicated her signature strength. Infuriated, Lika growled that his deception was utterly absurd. Zeke mentally examined the wild confrontation. He intentionally took blows just to understand her iconic electric technique. Throughout the pounding, he perfectly upheld his concealed breathing pattern. That exact breathing technique flawlessly aligned with her energy, aggressively compelling pure golden mana to surge within his core. Immediately, he effortlessly controlled the precise electricity that earlier burned him. He abruptly speculated that maybe Lika had an extraordinarily uncommon physique. Her tribe's blade method strongly demonstrated her whole lineage, naturally commanded complete electric supremacy. Oozing sheer assurance, Zeke walked ahead. He candidly admitted that her unrefined electric strength completely astonished him. Smiling intensely, he deemed this deathmatch superb training. He sincerely appreciated her astonishingly, disclosing his unexpected 2-star advancement. As dazzling gold energy burst forth, he confidently declared round 2. Screaming in sheer fury, Lika carelessly rushed ahead, slicing her radiant sword wildly. Zeke perfectly evaded her turmoil, readying a fierce retaliation. However, mid-step, he literally vanished in a blinding flash, appearing across the battlefield. Totally astonished, he questioned his own motion. He swiftly understood that absorbing vast energy significantly enhanced his muscles. This new electric aura truly transformed him. Recognizing this outrageous voltage bestowed divine-like swiftness, he softly admitted he entirely lacked mastery over this crazy velocity. Observing from the bleachers, Rangus stayed frozen. Their divine speed made them entirely unseen to human sight. Both fighters transformed into frenzied flashes of gold and neon. Rangus abruptly recognized Lika persistently failed to hit her elusive objective. Seething with rage, Lika angrily shouted at Zeke to stop playing games. Zeke coolly refuted it nonchalantly, affirming she stayed truly perilous. Propelling ahead with dazzling speed, he released a powerful kick. She desperately defended, but the immense force propelled her away. That enormous blow pushed her awkwardly backward. Grinning ominously, Zeke nonchalantly declared the spectacular conclusion. Lika anxiously repeated his frightening warning. Zeke assuredly affirmed his lethal aim, eagerly disclosing a completely new fighting technique he intellectually devised. She muttered his assertion in complete rejection. Nodding intensely, he privately contemplated what grand title this finisher warranted. Lika stood completely perplexed by his mid-battle contemplation. She urgently wondered who instructed him such outrageous disrespect. Before she could even flutter her eyelashes, Zeke appeared suddenly beside her. Intense golden power fiercely concentrated into his hand. He intensely bellowed his final technique, Dragon Annihilation Fighting Arts Special Form Lightning Summit. The destructive explosion struck flawlessly, ensnaring her within a furious golden tempest. Her whole frame violently shook under strain. Her hefty blade slipped away as she fell onto quaking knees, intense static persistently zapping her fatigued body. Silent stillness entirely engulfed the whole stadium. Every single mouth fell open. Zeke attained complete triumph. Lika stayed completely devastated. She breathed unevenly, distress gradually settling in. Growing painfully, she awkwardly pushed upward. Her bruised muscles still quivered violently. Her entire defeat felt utterly unfeasible. She resentfully recalled bearing the burdensome fate as her tribe's future chief. Cursing, she entirely declined to falter again. A deep bitterness festered within. Meanwhile, Zeke leisurely walked nearer, kindly reaching out a hand to raise her. He genuinely admired her incredibly remarkable strength, asserting he passionately enjoyed acquiring new abilities. He described the tumultuous fight entirely valuable. Flashing a smile, he requested a future rematch, asserting halting now would be disappointing. Lika entirely froze, cheeks glowing vivid scarlet, gazing at his palm. Despite her embarrassing defeat, a strange delight fluttered within. Perhaps it ignited from true warrior pride or profound admiration. Zeke excitedly promoted their upcoming legendary clash immediately. Grinning radiantly, he openly desired their impending slaughter. Feeling somewhat shy, Lika strongly grasped his extended hand, ultimately acknowledging his greater power and conceding loss, occasionally afterward in a wildly tumultuous domain miles distant. A dimensional tear throbbed with unstable power. Inside stood Balsa Eldragon, the powerful patriarch and father to Lika and Zeke. A huge swarm of bloodthirsty creatures surrounded him. These hideous abominations charged ahead with sheer brutal intent. Balsa's eyes ignited with a blazing golden radiance. Without wavering, he released a destructive shockwave of energy, a suffocating draconic force that immobilized the whole horde immediately. With a deadly metallic murmur, he drew his sword, assuming his position. Starting the Dragon Annihilation fighting techniques, he released a solitary perfect cut. In an instant, every creature encircling him was sliced neatly in two. Collapsing motionlessly to the soil, he concealed his weapon with frightening calmness. As utter stillness collapsed, his top troops surged from the sidelines, eliminating any creatures still convulsing. The slaughter complete, Balsa turned to leave the rift, but a sudden disruption stopped his progress. A frantic warrior shouted out carrying urgent information. Pausing, Balsa coldly requested the update. Taking a profound, unsteady breath, the guard disclosed Lady Lika had attained the 2-star level. Balsa immediately halted in his steps, his intense presence disappearing. The burning light in his eyes diminished. He responded with no feeling. So what? Sweating profusely, the soldier faltered that reaching this milestone at 7 years old was remarkable, given her extraordinary potential. She could crush the 5-star level post-graduation. Balsa replied with complete frost, disregarding her unrefined skill as entirely insignificant, insisting on information solely about her combat usefulness, not this trivial information. The soldier swallowed entirely mute as the elder pivoted away. Frantically, the sentinel urgently exclaimed that Lady Lika had truly just lost a contest. Balsa halted abruptly, his inscrutable expression shrouded in darkness. In a menacing snarl, he inquired if an elder sibling smashed her. The frightened soldier desperately shook his head. He admitted she was surpassed by her equal Lord Zeke. Balsa spat the name Zeke like venom. Memories flickered of the boy's deceased mother, a humble maid. He remembered her brilliance in battle tragically diminished after giving birth. Balsa fixed his intense stare onto the soldier, insisting strongly to find out who had the audacity to train Zeke. Shaking, the guard confessed the young lord had no formal education. Zeke asserted triumph solely on primal intuition, concurrently ascending into the 2-star level himself. "I understand," Balsa whispered, with icy indifference. Turning away, he mercilessly ordered the prompt initiation of the first blood trial. The soldier inhaled sharply. He objected to the absurd timing, since these novices hardly had a month of fundamental training and were unprepared. Balsa brutally cut him off. "Death provides no postponements. Only the mightiest endure tomorrow. Star levels are completely insignificant. If they do not succeed in testing, anyone not passing this trial deserves to forfeit our esteemed family name." The guard promptly yielded. Then Balsa issued another shocking directive, insisting on the immediate retrieval of the notorious Freya. The soldier halted, hesitating to inquire if he genuinely referred to Freya, and the patriarch offered a deliberate threatening nod. Affirming the horror, he proclaimed Zeke's anomaly necessitated Freya herself to orchestrate the slaughter and personally witness the devastation. The soldier bowed in complete submission. For the initial time in eons, a malevolent grin crept across Balsa's visage. He murmured into the emptiness that Zeke could merely be his supreme creation. By sunrise at the Dragon's Lair Stadium, trainees were working through exercises. Meanwhile, Zeke sequestered himself, testing his boundaries in seclusion. Leaning against the wall, he steadied a massive rock on his head, holding heavy weights. Rangus and the others observed, utterly amazed. Eyes closed firmly, Zeke mentally analyzed the strike dragon fighting techniques. It was a fundamental yet architecturally impeccable body training approach, ideal for beginners. Breaking the quiet, Rangus inquired why Zeke was avoiding their team practices. Zeke nonchalantly mentioned that he had already completely perfected their present method. Rangus' jaw fell in astonishment, wondering how anyone could rush through that syllabus. Displaying a self-assured grin, Zeke declared it was merely because he was constructed completely distinct, evolving. Fatal serious, Zeke cautioned Rangus that his inner strength was moving in reverse. Completely baffled, Rangus inquired what he implied. Softly releasing the enormous rock with a muted thump, Zeke commanded Rangus to face away, pressing his hand against his classmate's back. Zeke infused his own untainted energy to forcibly readjust the obstructed mana channels. Pulling back, Zeke casually remarked that this was the perfect circulation path. Spinning around, Rangus radiated with tremendous appreciation, realizing Zeke was indeed a masterclass genius. Zeke pretended a theatrical scoff at his prior doubt. Frantic, Rangus vowed he never questioned him for an instant, massaging his neck bashfully. He confessed that truly only his distinguished father had ever directed him like that, almost imploring Zeke for additional advice. He presumed that since Zeke effortlessly dominated Lady Laika, these fundamental level 1 methods must be exceedingly dull for someone of his stature. Zeke shook his head completely, dissenting. He genuinely admired its harsh straightforwardness and unyielding base. It ignited profound nostalgia for his previous life's martial journey, a method his past students once deemed unreasonably harsh. The mythical dragon annihilation combat techniques was an extraordinarily intricate discipline, requiring total command over both body and soul. It officially claimed 4 positions, yet Zeke instinctively created a lethal 5th form while battling with Laika. Beyond that rested a concealed final blow he once employed to vanquish a genuine dragon. Interest ignited concerning his other forgotten methods. Throughout the ages, this exciting notion made his blood simmer. He continued his individual effort, observing that a genuine fighter must tread their own journey. Rangus abruptly interrupted, pleading with Zeke for instruction to significantly enhance his power. Zeke examined him quietly, Then a faint grin appeared on his face as he nonchalantly concurred. Rangus stood utterly astonished. Zeke just inclined his head, reminding the guy that he explicitly asked for this. Still bewildered, Rangus confessed he anticipated refusal. Zeke confidently asserted Rangus genuinely had promise. Suddenly, Laika came near them. Appearing somewhat uncertain, she indeed sought Zeke's guidance as well. Rangus's jaw fell at her unforeseen request. Laika icily confronted his response. Dropping her pride, she acknowledged she once thought herself entirely unbeatable among their generation. As the upcoming successor, she confessed, his savage lightning expertise had completely broken her lofty pride. Zeke laughed, asserting full accountability. Blazing with determination, Laika vowed to acquire sufficient raw strength to defeat her own siblings. She then pleaded for his direction. Zeke descended into profound, assessing quietude. The intense strain persisted as he restrained his response. Laika gazed back, her eyes filled with clear apprehension. She wondered if he truly desired this spectacle fully conscious. His contentious heritage made everything extremely perilous. Rangus nodded fervently. Being Balsa Eldragon's true son, automatically confined Zeke into the lethal succession conflict, irrespective of his decision. Totally unbothered, Zeke dismissed their concerns. He promptly changed the narrative, asking if her injured physique could even endure training. He remarked her severe combat injuries needed a complete month of recuperation. Flashing an arrogant grin, Laika told him to relax. She had already gulped a premium healing elixir. Zeke and Rangus exchanged a highly dubious muted glance, muttering under their breath. They seriously doubted a basic entrance exam item possessed that kind of ridiculous miracle-working regeneration. Rangus speculated the heir naturally accumulated premium elixirs. Zeke exhaled in sheer disbelief, marveling at this contemporary era's insane resource disparity. Laika confirmed their suspicions, admitting that without that elite supply, she would be confined to bed for 30 excruciating days. Shifting back to business, her piercing gaze fixed onto Zeke. She boldly demanded to know if he would truly transform her into a weapon. She desired absolute power under his guidance. Zeke promptly embraced a spectral grin adorning his lips. He asserted he never dismissed eager youngsters. This elder reply utterly perplexed the pair, loudly reminding him they were truly the precise same age. A sincerely uncommon laugh slipped from Zeke's mouth as he admitted. He teasingly mocked Laika, asking if she genuinely desired her victor acting as instructor since he utterly defeated her in battle. She vehemently retorted that her battered self-importance did not count. Panhandlers could not be selectors. To seize the Eldragon throne, she vowed to attain absolute supremacy through any merciless means accessible. Fascinated by her intense drive, Zeke inquired about the source of her complete fixation. She sternly disclosed that failing signified becoming a mere political piece. The optimal case scenario involved a coerced union with a random relative. At worst, she would be traded to a total stranger. Zeke's countenance shadowed immediately as genuine unfiltered fury sparked within his gaze. When he angrily sought explanations, Laika revealed the disturbing reality behind the renowned Eldragon genetics. Their extraordinary lineage propelled the clan into a warped purity fixation. Rangus fiercely trembled. A cataclysmic weight burst forth from Zeke. With frost in his tone, he denounced the Eldragon clan's completely abhorrent, nauseating customs. He smashed his hands together, pledging to entirely eradicate these worthless customs. Before his murderous intent reached its zenith, arriving top instructors immediately broke the oppressive atmosphere. Laika inquired about their unexpected intrusion. Meanwhile, Zeke silently cursed, pondering if his disloyal outburst had been fully revealed. Emerging from the darkness, a fiery red-haired woman appeared. A staff member proudly presented her as their brand-new exceptional instructor. He insisted on utmost respect for her kind personal mentorship. The fiery-haired newcomer instantly strode directly toward Laika, displaying a misleadingly sweet grin as she extended her hand to welcome Lady Laika. Alarm! Bells shrieked in Laika's mind, compelling a frantic backward jump. Zeke immediately protected her while a frightened Rangus grasped his sleeve. The Scarlet Woman's grin contorted into something malevolent. She commended Laika's keen instincts and strong presence, yet frigid perspiration dripped down Zeke's neck because he truly had not perceived her arrival. Rangus hurriedly murmured, inquiring about her identity. The team swiftly officially declared her as Lady Freya. She majestically proclaimed herself Freya Fyuk of the mythical Black Dragon Corps, bowing elegantly before securing her predatory stare onto Zeke. She inquired if he was the notorious Lord Zeke. He offered a stoic nod. Then the psychological combat commenced. She ridiculed his response to her specter-like arrival. Without wavering, he declared her antics were remarkably simple. Freya entirely halted. Her haughty grin disappeared. As golden power blazed within Zeke's eyes, he nonchalantly complimented her distinctive shadow-walking footwork. Freya immediately understood why the Supreme Patriarch Balsa L. Dragon fixated on this creature. Unperturbed, Zeke tirelessly examined her physical dynamics. He monitored her mana accumulating distinctly in her lower body, entirely eliminating all resistance and noise. An exhilarating jolt of combat. Hungry enthusiasm finally sparked in his gaze. While he examined her enigmatic fighting posture, Freya dominated the space confidently, proclaiming herself as their new battle instructor. Astonished whispers surged through the audience. Everyone acknowledged Lady Freya, the Tempest Wind, as the supreme force of their lineage. A fellow instructor confirmed her extraordinary standing as a 6-star creature in the Black Dragon Corps, the mythical frontliner safeguarding the family leader. Jaws fell everywhere. Why would such a premier icon squander her time guiding a group of novices? A malicious grin crossed Freya's face. She consented to shape them into arms, provided they endured one harshly straightforward test. Fears surged through the frightened crowd, but she merely grinned, advising them not to worry. Her frigid stare scanned the room. The trial, utterly straightforward: locate a crystal core and remain alive for 30 days. Deep within the infamous Poison Dragon Mountain, Rangus immediately lost all his hue. Yet a strange surge of nostalgia swept over Zeke. That accursed summit literally teemed with deadly poisonous creatures. Trembling like a leaf, Rangus stuttered out a horrifying truth. Brushing against a solitary blade of grass, there could immediately flatline an ordinary guy. It was complete nightmare fuel. Zeke recalled regarding that death trap as his private gym during his previous life. Nevertheless, he believed throwing novices into this meat grinder was incredibly harsh. Freya icily discarded the regulations. Everyone obtains a solitary crystal sphere. Misplace it or break it, and you are promptly disqualified. A trembling novice lifted his hand, faltering about the consequence for failing, and Freya retorted without flinching: instant removal. However, she nonchalantly remarked that the poisonous air was not their greatest issue. Master the dragon's breath method flawlessly, and their crystal spheres would proactively protect them from the deadly miasma. Lika, always the astute one, pointed out the evident danger of bloodthirsty creatures. Freya's glare became predatory. She icily stated they had to butcher those precise beasts for sustenance or perish. Pure unrefined. Fear surged through the novice ranks. Someone shouted that this was outright suicide. Understanding their fundamental combat techniques would not even dent those altered creatures. Out there, Freya just grinned. She threw them a 5-day reprieve, permitting them to select one essential weapon technique from the vault. To master, she created it. Translucent clear. Unleashing this new fighting ability was their sole genuine pass to enduring the slaughter. Her shadowy grin immediately disappeared. If you neglect your duties and do not comprehend it in 5 days, your blood is not on my conscience. Out there, a trembling child squeaked out, inquiring if the instructors would save them when situations became far too lethal. Freya released a bone-chilling malevolent laugh. Welcome to the Dragon's Lair, the merciless domain of the mythical Eldragon lineage. Fragility equals demise here, she spat. If you cannot slaughter a few minor creatures, just go become their tranquil nighttime meal. Utter dread seized the crowd. Rangus appeared prepared to weep uncontrollably, while Lika remained entirely motionless, assessing her chances. Zeke squinted his eyes. He profoundly doubted if the Savage clan was the same Eldragon family he recalled, because it seemed completely foreign from his time as their ultimate leader. Disregarding them, Freya began throwing out dusty fighting guides, instructing everyone to advance and assert their weapon techniques. The frantic newcomers eagerly crowded the front, faces contorted with urgent hope and fear. Rangus completely halted, bewildered about his decision. Zeke nonchalantly nudged him toward a spear guide, highlighting his impressive spear skills during the harsh entrance trials. Rangus enthusiastically grabbed it, bowing in profound appreciation. Lika advanced next, assuredly stating she desired a great sword style relying on her earlier expertise in its powerful fundamental blows. But Zeke immediately obstructed her confidently, proposing she excel in axe techniques instead. When a perplexed Lika inquired why, Zeke clarified how the weighty axe would flawlessly conceal her deadly blind spots. Coming from a whiz like Zeke, Lika set aside her uncertainties and confidently nodded, relying on his strategic brilliance entirely. Freya's keen voice abruptly resonated, confirming if everyone had obtained their skill books. Noticing their selections, she cautioned them to work like crazy for the next 5 days, because mastering that particular fighting technique was truly their sole defense against demise. Fail to adjust, she hissed, and they would encounter a dreadfully pitiful fate. Decaying on the accursed Toxin Dragon Mountain. Halfway out the entrance, Freya abruptly halted. She gradually looked back, unleashing one last crushing revelation. The merciless upperclassmen were officially pursuing them for their gems. Rangus gasped in sheer terror. Freya icily clarified that the experienced students participated in this lethal test, but their actual primary mission was tracking down newcomers for their life-preserving orbs. She ridiculed that. Certainly, the frightened freshmen had bolstered numbers, and the rough landscape was enormous, but those experienced assassins would employ every underhanded tactic to massacre them. Leaving that spirit-breaking cliffhanger lingering, Freya disappeared into the darkness. Rangus appeared as if he had encountered a specter. He completely freaked out, shouting about how they were meant to endure against frenzied creatures and dominant upperclassmen. Lika frowned, her thoughts already speeding. She understood those experienced warriors vastly surpassed them in sheer power, indicating a solitary confrontation would result in a swift, savage loss for any newcomer. Zeke merely nodded at her precise reasoning. He calmly suggested she form a top-notch team if going solo was not an option, noting the guidelines never prohibited collaborating for survival. When a frantic Rangus inquired about Zeke's master strategy, he nonchalantly shrugged. He completely planned to soar alone and regard this ordeal like a holiday. Lika exhaled, displaying a slight grin. She teased that his wild assurance was entirely on brand. Before plunging into their grueling training, Zeke almost insisted they go dine first. Strolling away, Lika elbowed Rangus, murmuring if he ever sensed their companion was secretly unique, and Rangus anxiously nodded in complete accord. Quickly advancing 5 intense days, the novice group stood quaking before the enormous, frightening Venom Dragon Mountain. Intense pressure filled the atmosphere, a fierce mixture of stifling fear and fiery determination for the impending slaughter. Freya stood high, displaying a wickedly keen smile as she proclaimed the dreary weather perfect for an execution. Rangus shuddered violently. The final test approached nearer. Rangus clutched his armament, wondering if a nobody like him genuinely fit alongside the respected Lady Lika. Surrounded by distinguished noble geniuses, her decision entirely perplexed his thoughts. After all, he was simply a low-born peasant, lacking any genuine presence. Without a single accolade to his name, suddenly, recognizable voices broke his swirling uncertainties. Raymond and Celine approached the plate, reflecting his precise apprehensions. Their gazes reflected sheer terror, blended with frantic hope. Celine, an East Hall peasant, admitted her own complete skepticism. Standing next to the luminous Lady Licca for this harsh survival contest felt like a total fever dream. Raymond displayed a comforting smile, his eyes fixed on their esteemed leader. Catching their overwhelming anxiety, Licca advanced. "Bloodline signifies nothing here," she proclaimed. "I selected your innate potential." Her fierce certainty immediately broke Rangus' persistent self-doubt. Fiery determination sparked his spirit, clutching his spear firmly. He fixed his gaze on her, promising to never pull their team down. Raymond interjected passionately, promising to surpass her most extravagant hopes. Licca radiated with glowing warmth, entrusting the team's destiny to them. Her steadfast presence energized the whole squad. Shifting to Zeke, she inquired about his outrageous solo-run tactic. Zeke simply displayed an arrogant grin, yearning for the forthcoming carnage. Shaking slightly, Celine stared in complete wonder at their intrepid boss-level energy. Raymond attributed their confidence to sheer noble privilege, but Licca immediately dismissed that. "I am frightened too," she admitted, declining to be associated with that utter lunatic. Zeke truly blinked, entirely astonished by her concealed unease. "Why fret it," he mocked, boosting her selected team of hidden treasures. But the whole team vehemently objected, citing a multitude of deadly reasons to worry about this deathmatch. Licca gazed intensely at Zeke, questioning his true confidence in her recruits. He nodded immediately, secretly astonished by her incredibly overpowered scouting skills. This lineup was straight fire. Her vision for concealed talents was unparalleled. Zeke hyped their impeccable team cohesion, forecasting an effortless stroll in the park. Dripping cold perspiration, Rangus called out his impulsive pride. Suddenly, Freya's authoritative tone cut through their conversation, insisting on complete quiet. Surveying the tumultuous courtyard, she grinned at the newly formed partnerships positioned before her. Collaborating was their sole survival strategy, given these novices hardly understood how to sway a sword correctly. Advancing, Freya activated the timer. She outlined the harsh, inflexible guidelines of interaction. Objective 1. Endure 30 excruciating days within Poison Dragon Mountain. Objective 2. Protect your crystal sphere with your existence. Misplace it, you falter. Since every single relic was indistinguishable, pilfering a competitor's orb was completely on the table. Sheer terror surged through the weaklings, but Zeke's predatory shimmer sparked within his frightening stare. It was essentially a free-for-all hunting territory. Freya released another huge revelation. Once the new recruits arrived in the area, top-tier upperclassmen would swoop in as hunters. The experienced students guffawed maliciously, ridiculing the quaking newcomers below. Collecting relics from these pitiful novices would be complete child's play. Zeke's team was immobilized by advancing fear, excitement, and pure horror. Enveloping up her cruel briefing, Freya officially released them to pursue. A deafening battle shout fractured the strain. The crowd of students rushed recklessly toward the threatening outline of Poison Dragon Mountain, driven by urgent aspiration. Before disappearing into the turmoil, Laika insisted Zeke remain alive. He displayed a wicked smile, assuring triumph, changing the narrative and wishing her team good fortune. Eyes shining with authority, Laika directed her vanguard ahead. Issuing one last caution, Zeke readied his solo plunge. Freya focused on him, announcing his takeoff time. Her voice saturated with curiosity. Zeke dismissed her piercing stare, nonchalantly expressing regret for the holdup. Freya raised a very doubtful eyebrow. Not even remotely frightened, she inquired. Zeke responded with an eerily composed grin. He walked into the void. Freya observed him categorizing the boy an utter enigma. Later that evening, a nervous master approached the chief examiner, sweating profusely over the novices' survival rates. Freya pretended unawareness, angling her head. He contended this dreadful test would certainly annihilate simple novices. A second veteran nodded somberly, indicating these delicate newcomers hardly had a few scant months of basic academy instruction. They were devoid of single-star ratings, much less genuine life-or-death fighting instincts. He genuinely questioned whether any of them would come back alive. But Freya merely displayed a mischievous, unconcerned smile. She dismissed their anxiety, asserting the mountain's poisonous indigenous creatures were nothing more than pitiful 1- or 2-star mobs. Zero real danger level, radiating like a celestial being. She assured complete security. However, under her breath, she wickedly schemed to release the supreme concealed adversary shortly. Grasping her shadowy murmur, the master insisted on specifics. Freya merely grinned, dismissing it as entirely nothing. Pivoting to the ravenous seniors, she indicated the second wave, eyes gleaming with predatory desire. The veterans drew their arms and rushed the summit. As their outlines disappeared, a malevolent sparkle flickered in Freya's eyes. She murmured into the emptiness, wagering on who would truly emerge unscathed. A distorted grin spread across her face. She was perishing, to witness the slaughter. Meanwhile, within the pitch-dark mountain, the seniors unleashed their merciless pursuit. A hawk-eyed senior immediately zeroed in on new prey. It was Zeke. The guy stood motionless at the mountain's base like a sitting target, entirely unaware of the approaching threat. One upperclassman scoffed loudly, ridiculing the oblivious freshman for dawdling at the starting line, far behind the remainder of the group. Another upperclassman bypassed the trash banter, elevating his weighty crossbow and aiming at his objective. Swoosh! But before that deadly strike could link Zeke's hand obscured, he seized the lethal missile right out of nothingness. The seniors gaped, nearly dropping their jaws. Zeke nonchalantly broke the wooden rod in two. "Took you folks long enough," he grinned. One senior freaked out, doubting his assurance. But the archer yelled to shake it off, frightened by that crazy mid-air reaction. No reluctance. Zeke burst ahead, departing only after pictures behind. An untamed primal excitement sparked within his radiant eyes. Displaying a mischievous smile, he proclaimed the true game had merely commenced. Elsewhere, Celine's team encountered fierce creatures deep within Poison Dragon Mountain. Celine annihilated a gigantic altered toad, observing its enormous form tumble down. Suddenly, a second terror sprang directly from the pitch-black darkness, targeting straight for her blind area. But Raymond was crucial. He rushed in, smashing his hefty shield to flawlessly deflect the surprise attack. Following up with fierce strength, he struck the creature into the soil, leaving the hideous brute entirely shocked and defenseless. Channeling sheer determination, Raymond smashed the creature with a lethal shield blow. Wiping his perspiration, a proud smile illuminated his face. Relieved to find Rangus, utterly annihilating his own fiendish adversary nearby. Suddenly, Laika's assured voice cut through the turmoil, energizing their impeccable synergy. Rangus offered a thankful nod, but his jaw dropped when he noticed a literal mountain of slain beasts. Laika had single-handedly taken down an entire swarm. Celine stood completely frozen in wonder. She murmured, recognizing Laika's extraordinary fighting strength resided in a completely different realm. Raymond nodded in utter astonishment. While they grappled with a few weaklings, Laika had nearly eliminated the whole dungeon level. Laika merely dismissed the excitement. Displaying her 2-star warrior rank, she asserted these low-level creatures were hardly a minor challenge. Still, she recognized their tremendous advancements. Celine and Raymond had officially emerged as 1-star fighters wielding significant new power. Both newcomers radiated with boundless appreciation, fully conscious that her intense guidance unlocked their concealed capability. Rangus, however, remained utterly quiet. Intense insecurity weighed him down. He was the sole one without a star. Celine instantly sensed his declining energy. Stepping up, Celine warmly assured his power-up arc was approaching soon. Raymond gave his bro some significant support, encouraging him to believe in the effort. That's sincere. Team allegiance struck Rangus right in the emotions, compelling a thankful grin. Laika swiftly dismissed his uncertainties. She reminded all that he just single-handedly defeated 3 creatures using sheer, starless, unrefined skill. Thanks to his harsh spear practice sessions under Zeke, unlocking that initial warrior star was truly just a question of time. Soaking in her unwavering belief, Rangus became emotional, suppressing actual tears of relief. Meanwhile, Laika surveyed the diminishing skyline. Shadows were advancing. She announced an immediate strategic withdrawal back to base camp. Celine fervently concurred, physically trembling at the mountain's frightening nighttime mortality rate. But midway down the path, Laika hit the brakes. The atmosphere instantly changed. Rangus murmured, inquiring for a status update, but Laika remained motionless. Her stare became lethal, grave, penetrating the darkness. "Why is someone hiding close to our boundary?" she whispered ominously. Moments afterward, a spooky outline emerged from the unruly vegetation. The team immediately freaked out at the sudden fright. Celine and Raymond drew their arms, emanating sheer, murderous intent. The enigmatic student nonchalantly walked out, sporting an arrogant grin. "Nice radar, Laika," the conceited senior taunted. She inquired if he was pursuing their exam crystal. His affirmative confirmed their greatest dread. They were prime targets. Worse, this guy was a 2-star powerhouse. Flexing hard, he boasted about his mission to harvest freshman crystals, labeling it a huge windfall, stumbling onto Laika's elite squad. Unperturbed, Laika retaliated, challenging him to take on her complete 4-person group alone. But that nefarious grin only expanded broader. He erupted into frenzied chuckles. "Whoever claimed I was moving alone," boom, 3 additional upperclassmen, all displaying 1-star auras, emerged from the darkness like hunters. The alpha senior scoffed, ridiculing Laika for bearing such excess baggage. "Companions," pulling his sword from its scabbard, he bellowed at them to surrender the treasure. He immediately attacked Laika with a powerful blow, but she nearly vanished. Directly beyond it, "Maintain the position," she shouted, fixing fierce eyes on the raid boss. "He's mine." Meanwhile, starless Rangus was getting utterly obliterated on the side. The foe's unyielding combinations trapped him in frantic survival mode. The elder guffawed mercilessly, insisting the novice simply concede. Rangus recoiled, nearly shattering. But then a fundamental recollection with Zeke surged through his thoughts. He remembered inquiring the prodigy if an utter underdog could ever overthrow a giant. He had expressed his deepest dread, remaining starless, and pulling his friends down against formidable creatures. Zeke's response had utterly broken his anticipations. "If they're a 3- or 4-star creature, simply yield and preserve yourself. A starless 0 battling an awakened fighter, complete suicide." But Zeke asserted survival was entirely feasible against a mere 1-star. When Rangus urgently inquired about this reasoning, Zeke unleashed a harsh reality bomb. The hidden advantage, taking advantage of a solitary blind spot. A blind spot, Rangus repeated, entirely confused. Zeke nodded expressionless, shattered their protective barrier, and even a 2-star Titan collapses. But how do you detect that imperfection? Zeke's response was eerily easy. Endure. He commanded Rangus to hunker down entirely, prolonging the battle until exasperation fosters a deadly mistake. Rangus questioned it then, but Zeke swore by this technique. Discarded tier fighters cannot break defenses by compel. You truly must lure them into excavating their own tombs. Zeke delivered a stern caution. Fail to absorb the blows and you remain a failure eternally. Certainly, this tactic fails against genuine geniuses like the intense Lika, but against some ordinary 2-star group. Complete flawlessness. He emphasized one fundamental principle. Rely on your own concealed capability. Then Zeke provided his final transformative advice. Cease overanalyzing the immense strength. Chasm. Just withstand the tempest. And when that shield fractures, stab them without compassion. Returning to the harsh truth of conflict, Rangus clutched his armament, Zeke's unrefined knowledge igniting in his spirit. The wake-up call struck fiercely. As the underdog, he had to suppress his ego, absorb the impact, and search for that golden opportunity. The foe lost his sanity. His blows became perilously careless while Rangus perfectly parried everything. Just perish already, the elder bellowed, unleashing a destructively careless strike. Right then, time halted. Rangus noticed the error. The precise, deadly defect. Zeke anticipated no reluctance. Permitted, Rangus channeled every bit of his intense determination together. Roaring like a creature, he thrust his spear forcefully through the elder's broken guard. The tormentor gasped on air, crumpling into a pitiful, insensible pile. As the colossal tumbled, a dazzling grand aura burst forth from Rangus' center. The mythical awakening series. He ultimately broke his boundaries, bringing forth a one-star core. Laika's mouth fell open in sheer astonishment, immediately transforming into intense pride over her underdog colleagues. Heroic triumph. Meanwhile, the foe leader remained entirely immobilized. His haughty grin fractured, his mind short-circuited. How was Laika completely dominating him when they possessed the identical 2-star rank? But Laika possessed a secret. Thanks to Zeke's formidable masterclass, she could infuse tremendous quantities of explosive energy directly into her lethal blade. Your largest error was pursuing my team, she murmured icily. Abruptly crackling golden lightning fiercely whirled around her metal. Game finished, she proclaimed, releasing her sword with a heaven-splitting shockwave. The boss collapsed immediately, erased from the combat zone. Surveying the complete devastation for lingering dangers, Laika hurried back to her damaged team, anxiously assessing their conditions. Verifying no fatalities, an immense surge of relief enveloped them, bursting into triumphant adrenaline-charged cheers. They truly defeated their merciless elders. Celine and Raymond dashed over, encouraging Rangus for his magnificent 1-star transformation. He beamed a radiant, fatigued grin. Laika looked at her remaining crew with great pride. With everyone completely alert, she assured them their upcoming dungeons would be a complete cinch. Abruptly, her intense gaze mellowed. Where in the universe was Zeke? Shift to the mountain's bleakest horror area. A frightened elder was racing for dear existence. Weeping uncontrollably, he desperately prayed. Keep away, you complete fiend. Zeke, he wept, trembling fiercely in sheer, unrefined terror. Was that child covertly a chief-level beast? The so-called superior upperclassmen ripped through the woods, wailing pitifully for salvation. Their sole hope was evading the Grim Reaper. Behind them, Zeke nonchalantly pulled a thoroughly crushed senior. The concealed survivors observed, trembling with fear. What sort of weirdo was this freshman? Gripping a viciously butchered enormous snake, Zeke displayed a deranged grin, playfully inquiring, "Who else desires to participate in my small survival game?" "He is utterly insane," the upperclassmen screamed, dispersing like terrified rodents. This made no sense at all. They were the lethal predators, not the pursued victim, racing aimlessly. A frantic senior brutally crashed onto the ground, frantically clawing upwards. His blood chilled as he gradually met gazes with Zeke hovering above like a terror. Those fiendish crimson eyes penetrated his spirit, gaping over this tedious game of tag. Zeke cunningly stretched out a cordial hand. But with a chilling smirk, he vowed a savage confrontation the moment he rose. The senior students diminished in complete hopelessness. His mind merely turned off, collapsing immediately into the dirt. Zeke just angled his head, clearly puzzled by this error. "Did I damage him?" he murmured, examining the shadowy forest for new prey. He boisterously mocked the darkness. Why behave so feeble now? He mercilessly ridiculed their phony, tough guy vibe from before, chuckling as he implored them to continue amusing him. Abruptly, his lethal intuition surged. An unfamiliar presence hovered close, altering his focus. He challenged the observer to enter the lethal area. Complete quiet reverberated in response. Zeke emitted a sinister, entertained laugh. If they merely desired a spectacle, he'd provide them a gory masterpiece. Shrugging it off, he loudly announced his warm-up was officially finished. Prepared to unleash chaos. Suddenly, an enigmatic silhouette appeared directly from the darkness, stepping flawlessly into Zeke's complete awareness. Icy perspiration soaked the exam supervisor. He gazed astonished at the youth named Zeke. Utter incredulity immobilized him. This boy effortlessly dominated upperclassmen far beyond his rank. Even more troubling, the youth effortlessly sensed his impeccably hidden existence. Acknowledging this outrageous danger level, the spy rushed to provide an urgent report right away. Back at base camp, Freya blinked in astonishment as several scouts abruptly dashed inside. Week 1 was officially concluded. 30% of the newcomers had already withdrawn completely. The remaining participants were finally adjusting to the fatal summits. Anticipating no forthcoming dropouts, Freya redirected attention to the elites. Silent stillness enveloped the chamber. The scouts shared frightened looks. Freya's gaze sharpened, insisting on the unvarnished reality. One scout revealed the truth. The seniors were perpetually escaping. Freya frowned. Escaping from what? Precisely. Completely no creatures in this area had sufficient strength to frighten those. Elite upperclassmen. A quaking scout admitted the wild reality. They were not evading creatures. They were fleeing Lord Zeke. Freya inclined her head. Why him? Because Zeke was truly pursuing the veterans for sheer amusement. Opposition proved entirely ineffective. Fleeing became their sole survival strategy. Another agent trembled. Lord Zeke was genuinely relishing this. He joyfully pursued them like defenseless cattle. Nobody had ever observed such pristine supremacy before. Even by the renowned L-Dragon lineage standards, Zeke contradicted all reasoning. Referring to him as a genius was a huge understatement. He was a true monster in a child's form. Freya grinned. Her initial doubts were entirely accurate. Soloing the demise area without a single tremor, his zero-fear aura during entrance yelled one indisputable truth. Playing defense was never his style. He asserted the top predator. Roll from second one. Remembering his expressionless stare gave Freya genuine shivers. Abruptly, intense tremors forcefully shook the whole command tent. A malicious grin spread across Freya's face. Ideal timing. That is exactly what I asked for. Guards dragged in a huge metal vault. Freya instructed them to release the weighty load right there, nodding approvingly. Gazing at the fortified rods, the scout's mouth genuinely fell open in sheer unfiltered terror. Oppressive tension seeped from the box. Was this nightmare fuel intended for students? Freya merely chuckled at their anxiety. The creature was strictly coded. Its aggression only activated against 2-star targets or higher-tier awakeners. Average novices were entirely secure from its deadly radar. Why release such a dominant boss? Freya asserted Commander Balsa personally approved this outrageous challenge. Spike. Covertly, though, she urgently required to urge this so-called child beast to his ultimate breaking point. Could Zeke truly endure a boss-level danger? Tomorrow at sunrise, the ferocious creature fell directly into his hunting territory. Deep within Poison Dragon Mountain, huge tremors abruptly immobilized Ranga and his whole combat team. Lika's survival instincts shouted peril. Raymond speculated some top-tier senior was forcefully showcasing their atmosphere. Ranga suspected a heavyweight beast. Yet a stifling fear kept contorting ferociously in Lika's abdomen. Boom! A ground-shaking shockwave tore through the woods. A gigantic old tree broke, plunging directly toward their heads. Dodge! Lika screamed. The team urgently plunged. Turned as explosive would shattered their precise former coordinates. Dust settled. Lika froze stiff. Celine gasped for air, frightened by the unfolding horror. All hue vanished from Ranga's face as frigid, immobilizing dread swept over him. "Flee," he rasped out. A gigantic rock golem loomed over them, its fiendish crimson eyes shining ominously. Miles away, Zeke relaxed on a harsh throne constructed entirely from crushed elders and vanquished creatures. He breathed out, noisily, uninterested to the core. No opponents were left. Complete deserted area. Even the sneaky proctors had entirely deserted his designated quadrant. Their presences disappeared, essentially providing him total freedom to act recklessly. Talk about a huge disappointment for his excitement. Abruptly, a fierce monopulse reverberated from the opposing summit. He originally dismissed it as a 2-star group. Incorrect. That intense pressure was certainly 3-star level. He frowned. A boss class being clearly breached this tutorial area. Was this some inactive ancient creature finally rousing from a centuries-long sleep? The typical novices would get utterly annihilated. Even a premier genius like Lika encountered assured destruction against it. Admin entirely mishandled their pre-exam danger search. But hold on. A drastically distinct hypothesis abruptly ignited. What if the Academy intentionally placed this raid boss here as a covert test? Whatever contorted plot those educators devised. A truly deranged grin finally spread across his uninterested face. Utter flawlessness. A new contender finally emerged. The creature prowled miles away. Why was it maintaining such enormous distance? Whatever. Lingering wasn't his manner anyway. Grinning, he sprinted directly toward the beast, challenging the entity to stand its ground. Meanwhile, across the rugged mountain, Celine unleashed chaos on the gigantic golem, but her destructive blow entirely rebounded. Total surprise immobilized her. That crazy blow didn't leave a single mark on its stony shell. Raymond attacked next, striking his hefty shield with complete maximum power. Yet just like Celine, his savage impact did completely nothing harm. Sensing its gigantic protection, Lika advanced. Crackling golden glow and pristine lightning immediately enveloped her lethal sword. A dazzling burst occurred, uncovering a small indentation on its arm. Boom! Lika understood it. Only pristine aura could penetrate this tank. Meaning only 2-star fighters like her had a possibility. Her 1-star team merely lacked the sheer firepower. Frantic, Rangus pleaded for a tactic. Stepping into complete boss mode, Lika commanded the whole team to adhere to her direction precisely. Her strategy escape the moment she attracts its lethal aggro. But Rangus immediately dismissed that timid getaway. Forsaking a companion wasn't a choice. Irritated, Lika retorted, cautioning them. They would merely turn into enormous burdens in this battle. Indicating the creature's limb, she presented the stark reality. Even directing her utmost explosive strength, she hardly dented its incredible armor. Being just 1-star novices, their feeble assaults couldn't even tease this colossal terror. Raymond acknowledged their pitiful damage production. However, they could still serve as support, generating vital opportunities for Lika's powerful strikes. Lika lifted a puzzled eyebrow. Clutching his armament, Rangus cursed. He would never pull her down. Celine supported him entirely. Flawless collaboration and impeccably timed aids were their absolute golden pass to triumph. Sensing their indomitable determination and complete faith washing over her, a gentle, assured grin crossed Lika's face. Recognizing their passionate spirit, she ultimately consented. Immediately, Lika saturated her razor-keen edge with fiercely crackling high-voltage energy. Raymond secured his shield in place while Rangus and Celine readied their ultimate support combination. Channeling maximum energy into her armament, Lika bellowed the combat directive to initiate their monumental high-stakes counteroffensive. Blending like actual lightning, Lika sprinted ahead, trailing untamed golden glimmers. But the rock behemoth ferociously swung back in an instant. Raymond valiantly thrust his shield upward. Unfortunately, his 1-star power entirely collapsed under the Titan's ground-shaking force. Strength influence. Flanking intensely, Rangus and Selene executed a perfect dual diversion. Gliding into the creature's blind area, Lika readied her ultimate conclusion, releasing her trademark shift, Heaven's Thunder. She ruthlessly performed a crushing backstab with every bit of her spirit. A tremendous shockwave shook the woodland. That colossal blow violently crashed the Titan into the ground. As the debris cleared, the nearby battleground remained in complete devastation. A frantic Rangus dashed over, urgently examining her vitals. Gasping for breath, Lika verified she endured, but her mana reservoir was entirely depleted. Wait, where was Raymond? Spitting blood, Raymond leaned on Selene, affirming his existence. But just as Lika called for a strategic withdrawal, a spine-chilling terror froze her back. The terror had immediately reappeared behind them. Sheer instinct took over, pushing Rangus aside, just as enormous stone claws forcefully seized her up. Squeezed inside its stony grasp, utter disbelief washed over her. Lowering her defenses after that final strike was a deadly novice error. Selene stood entirely immobilized, enduring Lika's utmost level nuke and still progressing like that contradicted all logic and rationale. Screaming Rangus carelessly propelled his spear ahead in a hopeless final effort to save. But the creature cruelly utilized Lika as a human flesh barrier, evading every single blow. Madness and sheer desperation entirely engulfed the frantic Rangus. Out of nowhere, a gigantic airborne tree log practically shattered the sound barrier. The disastrous collision violently compelled the creature to release Lika. Pulling her to safety, Rangus hauled her back. A utterly bewildered Lika gazed vacantly, attempting to comprehend her miraculous, entirely inexplicable getaway. Abruptly, a haughtily recognizable voice broke the tension. Zeke finally joined the conversation, nonchalantly inquiring about the enormous turmoil. They immediately identified that assured tone, yet entirely disregarding Lika's near-fatal condition. Zeke merely gazed at the towering beast with complete delight. His gamer eyes genuinely glimmered, ridiculing the frightening boss as a mere clay figure. Golden lightning illuminated as Zeke flawlessly assessed his target. Noticing Lika's distinctive aura, he couldn't fathom those amateurs confronted the boss prematurely. Swearing at his present physical constraints, he compelled his legs to dash quicker. In his legendary existence, he'd figuratively teleport there. Now, he resentfully endured this excruciatingly sluggish, low-tier marathon run. Tension surged for Lika's skilled team. Confronting an overpowering raid chief, there was no possibility those novices could endure much longer without him. Bam! An extraordinary overlooked ability suddenly activated in his mind. Stopping his dash, he immediately secured his naked hands onto a gigantic old tree. Flexing supreme god-tier power, he forcefully uprooted the enormous wood, channeling that recently regained martial discipline. His muscles swelled with frightening sheer explosive strength. He tossed the enormous log like a genuine javelin, transforming it into a destructive high-speed rocket. Grinning at his ascending wooden missile, a deep contentment enveloped Zeke. This savage tossing technique perfectly matched his presently dormant stats, connecting him with an essential distant weaponry. He immediately mentally reviewed the exam's combat guides, grasping the basics of these deadly throwing methods. They truly suited him like a glove. Being a mythical marksman in his former life, utilizing these new skills felt like second nature, but that excitement faded immediately. He understood concealing himself behind one insignificant tree would never shield him from a complete behemoth of a creature. Adrenaline surging, Zeke propelled himself ahead, racing at full speed toward Lika's team. A completely worn out Rangus just stared blankly, short-circuiting at Zeke's crazy arrival. Zeke's keen voice cut straight through the tumultuous battleground, verifying if his team was still alive. Rangus revealed that they endured, but indicated the enormous stone chief. Zeke merely inclined his head, repeating the term golem as if it were some strange extraterrestrial jargon. Then, the enormous titan ascended, charging directly for our boy. Laika and Rangus completely freaked out, yelling at him to evade the approaching death snare. But Zeke, he just nonchalantly lifted one hand, effortlessly grasping the Titan's ground-shaking strike. He grinned at its sturdy shield, assuming he would need to unleash his aura just to graze that stony exterior. He truly swatted the creature's enormous fist aside and yawned that defeating it the usual way would be a complete borefest. Laika almost fainted from his outrageous display. Rangus was completely at a loss for words. His team nearly got eliminated by the same foe Zeke deemed tedious. The Titan, entirely unperturbed, prepared to smash Zeke into powder. Zeke's gaze finally sparkled with frigid concentration, merely observing its monstrous size. He understood this creature was a moving catastrophe, but retreating never. He just prepared his arms to absorb the blow. The collision was thunderous, tearing through the ground and resonating across the whole woodland. While securing the creature, Zeke commanded his team to retreat to the secure area without delay. Without wavering, Laika's worn team hurried away from the peril. The instant they evacuated, Zeke harnessed his untamed strength, releasing a primal war shout as he forcefully hurled the gigantic Titan. Observing the creature entirely obliterate the tree line, he mentally assessed just how ridiculously sturdy its stone armor truly was. Packing deadly energy into his knuckles, he sprinted ahead with a truly fiendish stare, loudly inquiring if its insides were similarly bulletproof. Propelling himself upward, he shouted that it was time for a mood assessment. He then crashed into the creature with a destructive, fully powered energy hook triggering a shockwave that annihilated the region. Zeke despised prolonging boss encounters. It was far more efficient to completely obliterate the creature internally with one god-tier blow. His crazy tactic functioned perfectly, riding a huge adrenaline rush. He grinned, recognizing this unrestrained fighting approach was incredibly enjoyable. Fast forward 1 month. The grand headquarters of the prestigious Eldragon family was humming with its usual elite turmoil. Zeke, however, was in a completely terrible mood, extremely annoyed that someone interrupted his intense session. Apparently, the harsh mountain ordeal had officially concluded. Ever since the Titan assault, things remained surprisingly calm. Thanks to the complete massacre of an exam, only 30% of the 7-year-old novices actually endured. Still encountering persistent peril, compelled the remaining children to advance remarkably quickly. With the challenges concluded, Zeke was intensely called upon by Balza Eldragon, the fearsome leader of the clan. Sauntering down an infinite hallway, Zeke nonchalantly inquired of his guide Freya why the major leagues desired him. Freya instantly recoiled at his completely disrespectful manner, snapping at him to employ appropriate honorifics, but Zeke simply shrugged it off. Freya assumed he was acting ignorant, and retorted that he got summoned solely due to his erratic exam antics. Zeke truly appeared sincerely baffled by it. Freya stated flatly that his demeanor was the problem. She reminded him that a novice like him utterly shattered the senior elites, which entirely disrupted the academy's power structure. Rubbing her temples, she hissed that his trick caused every single upperclassman to entirely fail, and compelled them to literally restart their assessments. Zeke retorted that it wasn't truly unlawful, but Freya groaned that it was utterly unprecedented. Freya just face-palmed with a deep exhale. She whirled around forcefully, cautioning him to abandon the entire brooding rebel performance before stepping through those entrances. She almost pleaded with him to improve his vernacular and behavior, particularly when confronting the actual masterhead. Zeke merely blinked, angling his head with a vacant Y. Freya urgently cautioned the child that his trash-talking would send him speedily to the grave. She was frightened his frightening father, Balza, would immediately execute him. 0% anxious, Zeke just grinned, labeling his dad a complete psycho. They arrived at a colossal door where Freya tapped with perfect accuracy. She firmly referred to the man inside as Masterhead. Sweating profusely, she declared herself as Freya Winked of the renowned Black Dragon Corps, affirming she provided the target as instructed. A spirit-shattering bass, intense voice ordered them to enter. Quaking slightly, Freya shoved the enormous doors guiding him into an incredibly stifling office. She immediately bowed, informing that Zeke had been obtained. Balza gradually halted his writing, his keen-edged stare fixed on to Zeke, insisting to understand precisely why he attacked a senior during the trial. Shattering the profound quiet, Zeke exhaled. He was completely fed up with these monotonous inquiries. Avoiding the questioning completely, he daringly inquired of his fearsome father. If the guideline clearly prohibited battling upperclassmen during the examination, Balza icily requested a clarification. Zeke merely relinquished the true victory condition. The task was straightforward. Endure for 1 month and protect that crystal sphere. Zeke straightforwardly indicated that no additional regulations were present. If his techniques were prohibited, they ought to have stated so from the very beginning. Sheer terror immediately seized Freya. Listening to Zeke utter such careless words made her blood run chilly. She screamed, completely losing her sanity over him. Disregarding the masterhead, Balza secured his fatal stare. Boom! A gigantic dragon presence suffocated the chamber. The overwhelming weight slammed Freya directly to her knees. Frost filled her veins. This degree of lethal intent could truly obliterate Zeke from reality. But astonishingly, our guy did not even waver. That bone-crushing force meant nothing to him. Flexing his final unperturbed demeanor, Zeke directly told Balza to abandon the inexpensive intimidation methods. He genuinely labeled it bothersome. Balza lost his sanity, contorting with sheer fury. Meanwhile, with Freya still restrained to the ground, Zeke nonchalantly inquired if he was called merely to squander time. Regaining his astonishment, Balza vehemently insisted on the truth. Acting oblivious, Zeke requested for background. Balza promptly delivered. Up the battle reports. Annihilating a senior and smashing a 3-star golem. He angrily insisted on understanding how this kid was dismissing his legendary dragon presence. Voice oozing with doubt, he inquired how a mere illegitimate offspring could abruptly wield such monstrous law-defying power. Unfazed, Zeke gazed his father straight in the eye. He inquired if he truly desired the secret to his strength, asserting it was straightforward. Grinning, he delivered the toughest line. Because I am. Zeke. Balza intensely glared, completely provoked by the outrageous hubris of that response. Zeke retorted, a lethal stare brimming with complete protagonist assurance. Ultimately, the profound quiet shattered, and Balza reluctantly confessed that his son was just as harmful as the gossip suggested. Nevertheless, he offered a substantial bounty for destroying that golem. The reward, treasure from the Dragon Treasury, or a VIP ticket to the 2nd level of the Dragon Hall. Freya mentally crashed. These were ultra-sacred chambers. They protected the ultimate best-preserved secrets and legendary treasures of the Laragon lineage, extending over 1,000 years. The Dragon Hall was not merely a library. It contained a sea of perilously prohibited sorcery. Meanwhile, the treasury secured god-tier artifacts from legendary swords to archaic potions. Both areas were extensively fortified strongholds concealing shadowy family mysteries. Obtaining a VIP ticket to that 2nd level was essentially unfeasible. The reasoning behind this choice entirely shattered her mind. But our guy Zeke, he just rolled his eyes and unabashedly insisted on securing both iconic prizes simultaneously. Balza closed that off immediately, instructing him to choose one and depart. But Zeke assuredly lifted a solitary finger. Declining to be disregarded, he audaciously asserted his piece was not complete yet. Reaching maximum anxiety level, Freya frantically grabbed his collar. She forcefully pulled him toward the exit, plastering on a phony customer service grin. She vocally commended the masterhead and declared their getaway. While being towed away, Zeke nonchalantly cast a look over his shoulder. He had one last crushing truth revelation for his father. He icily cautioned Balza that restraining his genuine feelings would eternally confine him at his present strength level. That unrefined shout provoked Balza. He explosively surged with lethal intent once more. But then the unimaginable occurred. His dragon essence was immediately consumed by an even more frightening force, emanating from Zeke. Trembling, Freya urgently pleaded with him to be quiet. She essentially hurled him out the door. Left completely alone, Balsa remained paralyzed, grappling with the incomprehensible chasm of strength his son exhibited. Back in the primary hall, the instant they were secure, Freya completely erupted. In a huge psychological collapse, she forcefully questioned him on why he wished for death during that meeting. Zeke just offered a totally unconcerned shrug. He naively asserted he was genuinely on his utmost best conduct for his father. Freya almost lost her spirit, listening to his distorted reasoning. Why be pleasant with complete strangers but behave like a threat to the family leader? Zeke struck her with the harsh reality. It was precisely because Balsa was his parent. Examining his unnatural presence and villain-level assurance, Freya understood this kid was a strolling anomaly. She seriously insisted to know his true identity. Gazing at her as if she sprouted a second head, he uttered his trademark catchphrase, "I am just Zeke." That left her completely immobilized. Her mind went into overdrive. Every single Laragon offspring consumed the sacred dragon blood. This enchanted bloodline made it physically unfeasible to revolt against the master head. Zeke was meant to be entirely bound by this regulation. What type of beast could dismiss that spirit-crushing control? Sensing her theatrical inner turmoil, Zeke nonchalantly inquired if she was malfunctioning. She promptly dismissed it, but internally strategized a thorough exploration into his origins. Documents. Shifting the topic, she mentioned the legendary treasure. Only one reward was permitted. When he unabashedly requested a second helping again, Freya struck him with a severe dismissal. Sighing, he secured the Dragon Hall. Zeke urgently required to download the final 1,000 years of distorted family background. Suddenly, Rangus burst in like an enthusiastic puppy. He was completely thrilled to access the renowned library. Zeke grinned, inquiring if he was excited. Rangus nodded vigorously. His present spear techniques were already elite, but the idea of revealing legendary, divine-level battle guides inside had him drooling. Completing the lethal test was finally rewarding. Right on cue, Laika appeared, up almost pulsating with that same geek energy. She was prepared to consume every prohibited scroll. When Zeke inquired about the time restrictions on their VIP pass, she swiftly explained the archive regulations. The regulations were definitive. Obtain one solitary volume for the exterior, but consume boundless wisdom while inhaling inside these barriers. Laika inclined her head, inquiring about his Dragon Hall selection. Frankly, she completely anticipated him to plunder the treasury for excessive loot instead. Zeke grinned. Certainly, glossy equipment was alluring, but raw knowledge possessed genuine strength. At this moment, Laika acknowledged, boosting the second-floor records. Those higher-level manuscripts were truly legendary caliber. Contrasted with the ground level, she boasted her sword proficiency was already pinnacle, but Zeke entirely tuned out. Was this guy even grasping a single word? Approaching the massive Dragon Hall, a severe gatekeeper released the timer. 5 rigid hours. Complete silence was essential. Zeke wondered if 5 hours was truly sufficient. Laika laughed derisively. That was ridiculously generous, she asserted. Most amateurs hardly endured 2 or 3 hours. Her expert advice, secure your selected artifact first, then devour books until the timer hits 0. Rangus just hoped he would obtain one high-quality manual. Entering, Zeke understood pursuing the ideal scroll would be a complete struggle. Meanwhile, Rangus and Laika were entirely immobilized by sheer wonder. Standing within the legendary dragon chamber felt utterly surreal. Zeke, however, responded entirely differently. He merely gazed at the boundless sea of timeless writings. A mad, expected smile spread across his face. Sheer adrenaline surged through his veins. He urgently desired astonishing revelations that could truly break his anticipations. A frightening disclosure hit Zeke like thunder. Confined within lofty peaks of timeless writings, his mind malfunctioned over bizarre notions of existence, ripping distortions, sheer disorder, and genuine sorcery. This harsh narrative overload truly made his head whirl. Totally exhausted, he crumpled onto the frigid rock, digesting the sheer terror essence. He merely assimilated from 1,000 years of forgotten past. The planet had transformed into something completely unfamiliar, forcibly tethered to another realm through dimensional anomalies. 900 years ago, a colossal rupture tore open into a lethal new dimension, named the Chaos Realm. Inside, apocalyptic creatures literally named disorder governed everything. But superior human fighters endured there too, engaging in perpetual conflict against the Horde. Uncovering these survivors, the ancient dragons created a mythical cross-realm coalition. Sealing this agreement, for supreme female commanders wed into the dragon lineage, giving birth to the 4 powerful noble branches. Recollection struck Zeke, that shadow-imbued fiend he massacred, and Laika's crackling azure lightning energy. The harsh reality emerged. He was completely unaware. Both that sinister fog and her vibrant energy stemmed from that tumultuous realm. Sorcery obsessed him the most. It felt like extremely dominant extraterrestrial technology from beyond the rift. Driven by fervent inquisitiveness, he searched for spellbooks only to discover no signs. Suddenly, a frigid voice cut through the Dragon Hall's eerie stillness, insisting on complete silence. Spinning around, he spotted a golden glimmer in the shadows, but no one was present. Was the sound itself an enchantment? Examining the ceiling, Zeke noticed no presence, just that recognizable murmuring essence. Abruptly, the enormous volumes in front of him floated into the void. Observing, the scrolls resist gravity, Zeke's jaw fell. What type of overpowered magic is this? He questioned vocally. Then it dawned on him. Invisible threads of pure source energy were manipulating the pages. Crazy, he murmured, before the unseen force promptly silenced him. Grabbing a floating manual, Zeke taunted the shadow. How do you anticipate quiet after executing a trick like this? Show yourself. A cloaked specter above remained silent, forcefully severing their energy strands. Suddenly, an unseen force immobilized Zeke entirely, securing his muscles in total stasis. The enigmatic protector mercilessly hurled him directly down to the ground level, announcing his reading period irrevocably concluded. An invisible explosion propelled him forcefully through the massive old doors. Zeke nailed the landing perfectly, realizing he just tripped into an awesome new puzzle. His blood surged with excitement. He urgently needed to analyze those crazy source threads. Right then, a completely confused Rangus rushed over seeking answers. Lika rushed behind, questioning his grand mid-air expulsion. Zeke nonchalantly shrugged, attributing it to excessive excitement, and inquired about their spoils. Rangus proudly displayed, showcasing a lethal spear fighting guide, boasting he already perfected the initial combos. Celine interjected, showcasing her brand new fighting techniques, obtained from a prestigious sword master scroll. Raymond disclosed his thorough exploration into Guardian warfare, acquiring a substantial Guardian shield document. Zeke remained utterly quiet. A comical reality struck him. These supposed mythical methods were merely trash he nonchalantly created in his former life. Shaking it off, Zeke examined Lika's final selection. As glimmering, she unveiled a colossal, grand sword fighting scripture, initially crafted by the creator, but significantly enhanced by the present patriarch. Utter flawlessness for her training journey. Zeke gulped his phrases again. Yet another timeless personal talent that the 15th patriarch had entirely reworked. Just like his other hallmark techniques, Recollection's strike of infinite library racks filled with his overlooked previous existence expertise, now resting next to significantly enhanced contemporary updates. Could this enigmatic 15th patriarch actually be the brilliant designer behind these supreme revisions? This guy sounded incredibly intriguing. Glancing back at the immense archives, Zeke chuckled at his former tedium. Now he would truly eliminate to penetrate that vault again. Accelerate forward. 5 years. Lika controlled a dimly lit passage. Lika examined the vicinity for Zeke and Rengus until some fleeting classmates dropped a huge clue that the team was anxious about it. Out at the practice fields yet again. 12-year-old Lika whispered beneath her exhale before throwing them a brief gratitude. Hitting the soil field, she noticed Rengus, Raymond, and Celine securing gaze on their 12-year-old objective, Zeke. Meanwhile, immersed in documents, Balsa obtained a revolutionary communication. A brand new unique rift had just emerged. He instantly doubted the information, but the voice on the communications doubled down on the solid details. Black Dragon Corps Captain Ein revealed the surprise. Their scouts estimated an 80% chance of discovering enchanted water concealed deep within. But for Balsa, the spawn locations were a complete disaster. Why did it have to appear in the utterly worst place? Still, with high-quality magic water at stake, walking away was not a choice. This treasure was invaluable. Enchanted water literally transformed normies into elite sorcerers, revealing the extraordinary capability to convert raw source energy directly into mana. This final awakening gave rise to legendary sorcery throughout the domain, but it also ignited violent territorial conflicts over the holy magic springs. Today, a prestigious family's complete supremacy is assessed strictly by their sorcerer tally. Harsh reality check: the Eldritch clan possessed precisely 0 magical springs on their territory. Deprived of their own native sources, the Eldritch lineage had only one extreme survival path remaining: aggressively seizing unique rifts. Their present mage lineup was excruciatingly sparse. Every single awakened fighter, Balsa included, was a combat-hardened veteran who bled for their strength within those dimensional levels. Yet they were significantly outmatched by competing houses, immersed in natural magic springs. Asserting this new rift was not merely a task, it was complete survival. But Ein's drop zone, the plentiful dragon forest, was a huge warning sign. Blood had just been shed there in a recent border conflict. Although the Eldritch governed the majority, the thick woods bled directly into adversary territory. Those cruel adversaries, the Kerberos family, eagerly seized the massive portion, naming it the Grand Plentiful Woodland. Ein assured the central chasm lay directly on their land. But its gigantic expansion range endangered to overflow directly into Kerberos territory. He understood those bloodhounds would assault the area. The moment the intel surfaced, Balsa growled, aware the Kerberos clan possessed an uncanny skill for detecting high-tier treasure. The clock was counting down to their unavoidable revelation, which signified the Eldritch family had to secure and prepare for all-out conflict. The divide's distinct tumultuous regulations limited both groups, but they had to attack like thunder before the Kerberos hounds detected the aroma. Mind resolved, Balsa instructed Ein to promptly signal the alarm throughout all dragon nests. An exclusive selection test would commence immediately. Back at the dirt venue, Lika observed the fierce sparring session, astonished by their sheer effort intensity. Zeke relaxed like a chief at the nucleus, lifeless, eyed and anticipating them to explode. All 3 combatants charged at him concurrently. From unseen perspectives, Zeke's gaze deepened as he bodily steadied himself for the impact. He failed the triple strike without flinching an eyelash. The tip of Rengus savagely scraped his cheek, but Zeke merely grinned and complimented their combination. He promptly criticized 11-year-old Rengus for overextending his power, utterly disrupting his weapon's inherent rhythm. Shifting to 12-year-old Celine, he pointed out her fixation on speed spamming. Her quick-fire attacks inflicted no real harm, pleading for a deadly equilibrium. Ultimately, he acknowledged 12-year-old Raymond for his unyielding shield defense and footwork, but audaciously asserted they were all still holding back. He commanded them to amplify their lethal instinct and mercilessly gestured them back in. As Rengus surged forward once more, Lika vocally challenged the sheer madness of their any-fourthode self-destructive death matches. Zeke grasped her remarks and nonchalantly inquired what her issue was. She screamed that taking bearskin blows without triggering a drop of source energy was downright insane. Unfazed, Zeke entirely overlooked the problem, dismissing it as fundamental training. He completely showcased his muscular build through his shirt, urging Laika to appreciate the incredible effort. This brutal ordeal he bragged about was the hidden trick to creating an unbreakable body without mystical aids. Laika moaned, pleading with him to at least halt the aggression while they were truly conversing. Right on cue, Rangus ruthlessly backstabbed Zeke with his weapon. He yelled at Laika to fasten her gaze to the action and observe the absolute titanium defense of Zeke's physique. Laika squeezed her eyes shut, frantically gripping her head as she labeled them all certified lunatics. Raymond loudly inquired how Zeke's skin could be so bulletproof without aura. Celine supported him, swearing this tank configuration completely contradicted standard human biology. Laika snapped back, cautioning them to cease measuring Zeke against ordinary NPCs. She then posed the ultimate lore inquiry. Did they know the mythical designation of the seniors? The East Hall's demon offspring. Zeke just grinned, pondering if that provocative title was genuinely intended to insult him. Changing topics, he inquired about her unexpected arrival. Casting a look, Laika dismissed a training session for the moment, asserting she had significant news. Instead, Zeke inclined, his mind instantly captivated. The opposing dragon lair was taking action, and their unavoidable confrontation was coming much quicker than anyone expected. Rangus completely halted. Raymond, however, he merely grinned, aware this confrontation was fated even if the schedule leaped forward. Celine immediately linked it to the impending tests, but Laika admitted she was navigating without guidance on the actual details. Inquiring about her source, Zeke heard as Laika disclosed her secret extensively, overhearing the teacher's every single action. Zeke laughed, confessing he lacked her detection. Laika was essentially the unquestioned monarch of Academy T. Her voice lowered. The rumors didn't count. Enduring did. The West Hall contained a tangible beast named Asterisk, the supreme opponent striving for the household seat. Hearing this, Zeke's smile only broadened. Ultimately, some genuine amusement. Days disappeared. The whole East Dragon nest inundated the huge stadium, filled with enigmatic upperclassmen, the newcomers hardly identified. Scanning the diverse crowd, Zeke squinted. Laika nudged him, murmuring that her information was spot on, and the opposing nest clash was formally occurring. Abruptly, deep quiet engulfed the tumultuous chatter. Freya strode boldly onto the training fields, her frosty stare shattering the final murmurs in half. The whole student body immediately snapped into a stiff arrangement. She dropped the bombshell. In precisely 3 days, a full-scale conflict against the opposing dragon nests would erupt. Pure adrenaline surged through Zeke's arteries as Freya got ready to release a wholly unforeseen, sensational news on the audience. 72 hours until complete conflict against the rival dragon halls officially began. Shockwaves of fear surged through the ranks. A fight this enormous never occurred before final graduation assessments, leaving everyone reeling over what caused this unparalleled massacre. Freya maintained the true reasons secured entirely, declining to explain. But she tossed out one outrageous bait. Only the champions would reveal a highly confidential mission. Hearing that, a predatory gleam flickered in Zeke's eyes. Excitement simmered in his stomach. The stakes just soared, transforming a dull school event into something exceptionally exhilarating. Freya outlined the harsh regulations, a merciless elimination bracket requiring 7 top champions from all 4 halls. The twist? They had until dusk to crown their ultimate best combatants. A senior arrogantly presumed only upperclassmen would battle. Freya shot him a mortally icy stare, ridiculing his reasoning for believing she assembled the novices for no reason. The slaughter was open, to each individual grade. The seniors nearly suffocated in indignation. They utterly dismissed the notion of newcomers thriving against competing dragon halls. To their haughty minds, the freshmen were essentially cannon fodder, completely worthless in a genuine life-or-death combat zone. Turning her back, Freya icily announced. She couldn't care less about their internal choosing politics. Just generated the names by midnight. The second she disappeared, an arrogant senior named Rick seized the attention. Shouting commands, he aggressively secured all 7 positions for the seniors, boldly challenging any newcomer to protest. Without missing a moment, Laika fiercely responded loudly, dismissing his complete nonsense reasoning. She obstinately insisted on equal treatment, bellowing that the freshmen absolutely merited a just opportunity at the gruesome lineup. Rick scoffed, gazing down at her like a miserable insect, asserting she was completely misinterpreting the perilous chamber. Survival demanded sheer strength, not involvement awards. He harshly ridiculed her, insisting her prestigious lineage signified nothing in battle. Laika just commenced a threatening advance. Her frightening presence erupted, materializing 3 dazzlingly luminous stars of unrefined strength. She inclined her head, questioning his valued interpretation of capability. The encompassing elders immediately froze in sheer terror, completely immobilized witnessing her reach the unattainable 3-star level. The campus murmurs claimed she was limited to 2, leaving them stunned by her incredible advancement rate. Unperturbed, Laika icily declared, she entirely concurred with Rick's guideline. Total crushing power should dictate the victors. With a lethal grin, she tossed down a loud public challenge, daring him to locate 7 seniors who could genuinely defeat her. A mortified Rick gasped on his own fury, pitifully attributing her extraordinary strength to heredity. Still, he fervently intensified his stance, branding every other freshman as pure garbage, unable to endure their standard. Right then, Zeke's eerily composed voice cut through the tension, expressing dissatisfaction with the bothersome sound. Boiling over, Rick turned sharply toward Zeke, aggressively insisting on a reiteration. With a sneering smile, Zeke willingly obliged. Labeling him irritating once more just added fuel to Rick's searing rage. Zeke's tone became frigid. Did he truly believe underclassmen were merely worthless garbage? Rick stammered on his phrases. Zeke's gaze deepened as a monstrous, overwhelming weight surged. Zeke issued a harsh ultimatum, a colossal battle royale, until only 7 survivors remained alive. Laika face-palmed forcefully. Zeke's bloodthirsty tactic was entirely unhinged and far too extreme. Pivoting swiftly, she proposed a much more intelligent alternative, a organized high-stakes preliminary competition. This equalized the playing field. Anyone desiring fame could rise up regardless of their status. Locking gazes with the conceited seniors, she challenged them. If they were genuinely that dominant, a just fight shouldn't frighten them. Ingesting his pride, Rick resentfully accepted her conditions. He still lamented bitterly, labeling this entire farce a significant squander of his time. Storming away, Rick unleashed absolute daggers at Laika and Zeke. The conflict was on. Laika looked at Zeke. Was he stepping into the gauntlet? He didn't even flinch. Certainly. He nonchalantly tossed Ranga, Selena, and Raymond into the blend, leaving the trio entirely stunned. Ranga freaked out. Confront the upperclassmen. Honestly, Zeke agreed, his determination unwavering as firm stone. He ignited their recollections. They had endured his savage, nightmarish training for years now. If they concealed their fangs now, what was the purpose of all that blood and perspiration? Selena gulped hard, frightened by the overwhelming weight of confronting seasoned beasts, but Raymond clutched his firearm. If Zeke commanded leap, they were going all out. Ferocious smile spread across his face. The Supreme Dream Squad was back in operation. She energized the nearby newcomers, but sheer dread held them stuck to the ground. Overcoming 3-star champions appeared mathematically unfeasible. To them, Zeke merely exhaled at their pitiful hopelessness. Why be so feeble? Defeating tougher foes was the supreme cheat code to advance. Additionally, he grinned. He was eager to reveal just how deceptive These distinguished seniors truly were. Steel spat. The seniors drew forth, their swords oozing with poisonous pride and derisive laughter. They scoffed at the newcomer's boldness, utterly certain these pitiful bugs were heading toward complete destruction. Ranga's team steadied themselves, stomachs churning into nauseating knots as the foe approached. A senior laughed maliciously, jesting about restraining themselves so the infants wouldn't weep too intensely. Another snickered grimly. Aside from Laika, they were merely pitiful two-star stepping stones regardless. Catching their quivering silhouettes, Zeke shattered the strain. "What? Look like you're going to a funeral?" Ranga retorted, sweating profusely. Confronting a barrier of three-star titans was pure nightmare material. Zeke broke their uncertainty. 5 arduous years of his torturous boot camp, they were molded in flames. They just needed to believe in the sheer deadliness they had developed in the darkness. His steadfast belief sparked a blazing flame within Selena and Raymond's hearts. Yet Ranga's knees still felt like gelatin, a chilly fear gripping his stomach. "Eliminate the sorrowful history," a senior shouted harshly, insisting they hasten their unavoidable demise. It was moment to dispose of the refuse. But 60 seconds afterward, utter dead quiet, jaws dropped to the ground. The onlookers couldn't comprehend the total disruption in reality occurring before them. The underdogs had entirely crushed the elites. Were the seniors just remarkably out of shape this year? No, the elders weren't feeble. These newcomers were complete top predators. Zeke radiated, his pride nearly shining. Excited by the total slaughter, he hurried over to honor Ranga and the team with acclaim. Ranga's deflecting was keen now, his marksman-like eyes punishing every single minuscule opening in adversary defenses. Selena's Windflower Tempest was exquisitely deadly, and Raymond, his impeccable shifts between shield barrier and sword assault were captivating. Utter perfection. If immersing in genuine combat provided them this confidence, they'd soon be unbeatable deities. He also examined Laika. Her single-shot lightning strikes were destructive. Meanwhile, the leftover elites stood immobilized minds, short-circuiting at the sheer brutality observed. Laika grinned. Trash-talking naturally requires a harsh reality check. But Rick's mind broke. 3-star elites annihilated. Inconceivable. Defeated by mere 2-star newcomers, Zeke shut down. In ridiculing his rival's frantic rejection of the harsh truth occurring right in front of him. Bridging the divide, Zeke revealed a harsh reality. Positions in age utter absurdity. On the combat zone, total strength determines the only survivor. If elders lack power, they get overwhelmed. It was that straightforward. Shaking with intense rage, Rick thrust a trembling finger toward him. He shouted that the freshman was irrational. Star ratings equated to sheer strength. How could this novice overlook such a fundamental, indisputable rule? Unperturbed, Zeke provided a chilling wake-up call. Fancy positions signify absolutely nothing when your heart ceases. That grim reality paralyzed Rick entirely. Zeke's intense stare challenged the senior to comprehend the frightening nature of warfare. Genuine power merely signified enduring the carnage. Cracking. Out of his abrupt astonishment, Rick burst into a thundering blaze. "Close your mouth," he bellowed. As a proud elder, he declined to allow some brat to control him with deranged psychological tricks. He boasted about restraining himself previously, vowing unadulterated destruction now. Zeke just exhaled, completely drained by this pitiful exhibition of delicate pride. "Young children need to understand their position," Zeke mocked. "Let your hands do the real speaking." With everyone else out, he tossed down the final challenge. "Demonstrate those iconic senior martial arts. Prove your education wasn't a complete jest." That disrespect drove Rick over the edge. Yelling pure slaughter, he unleashed his magnificent fighting technique, soaring ahead like a cargo train. Yet prior to collision, dazzling gold flared within Zeke's lethal stare. Bam! A solitary catastrophic counter hook propelled the senior soaring across the whole battlefield. A fierce grin spread across Zeke's face. He sarcastically complimented the seniors flawlessly. Perfect training regimen. Dead quiet immediately engulfed the enormous arena. The audience halted entirely while the powerful senior collapsed to his knees in total humiliating loss. Observing the destruction, Laika murmured how incredibly dominant the child genuinely was. The fellow praised his rival's effort, only to overtly one-shot him before any genuine techniques were exhibited. Cutting to the West faction base, a completely bleak scene unfolded. Agonized moans resonated everywhere as bruised pupils urgently grasped their oozing injuries. Ignoring this enormous blunder, a shadowy silhouette sneered in utter revulsion. Rubbish, he mumbled heavily. Every single individual here is just utterly pitiful. This merciless despot, venial Fafnir. Eldragon, a frightening main challenger battling to capture the mythical clan's ultimate seat. Abruptly, a new team of survivors neared the atmosphere. Bowing with deep respect, their leader declared their savage testing stage was officially completed. Meet Alan Venial's fiercely devoted enforcer and a powerful 3-star elite. Behind him towered the bloodied champions who truly endured the ruthless elimination. Within those prestigious ranks stood Redden, a genuine 12-year-old child genius. The merciless atmospheres, predatory stare instantly fixed on the survivor. Summoning the kid forward, Venial insisted on the complete truth. Was this small novice truly wielding the frightening power of a 3-star? The boy's assured nod provoked a malevolent smirk. Skill fosters recompense, Venial purred, vowing a highly sought-after position in his private elite guard. Redden sank into a profound trembling bow. His small chest nearly burst with sheer pride at receiving the daunting young master's direct approval. Following such an absolute beast of a leader, the young genius knew the powerful West faction was fated for ultimate triumph. Defeating the special operation would be a complete cinch. For their top team, that perfect triumph would certainly honor the powerful Venial as the ultimate leader of the Eldragon Empire, ensuring his spot as the Patriarch's forefront. Suddenly, Alan emerged from the shadows, urgently seeking his dark master's instant undivided focus. Encouraged by his lord, the faithful enforcer leaned near. Confidential information verified the intensely skilled Lady Laika was officially falling into the East lineup. Raking a hand through his hair, pure poison contorted Venial's attractive features. That persistent pest, he growled, ascending with a frightening murderous intent. But the annoyance disappeared. Laika's mythical abilities meant entirely nothing. The West faction would mercilessly obliterate anyone obstructing their way. His resounding voice reverberated with complete assurance. They would annihilate the deadly particular assignment completely. This perfect slaughter would ultimately compel his haughty elder siblings to observe him rise. The crimson seat of the family leader. Judgment Day emerged weightily. Elite fighters from every single dragon division flooded the enormous arena, submerged in a vast ocean of shouting onlookers. Suffocating apprehension violently strangled Rangus as he gazed at the infinite sea of frightening visages. The sheer magnitude of the crowd was profoundly immobilizing. Stepping forward, Laika coolly observed that nearly the whole academy had emerged to observe this savage display. Honestly, she grinned. The Colosseum would be entirely overflowing if the ruthless preliminary tests hadn't already eliminated the weak. Seeking consensus, she met his gaze. But her traumatized companion remained completely still in absolute quiet. Her informal comment harshly pierced his profound childhood wounds. It brought to mind the shattered disappointments considered pitiful foe dragons just like his father. Seizing that spirit-shattering glimpse of bleak hopelessness, Laika skillfully turned. A firm, reassuring slap to his shoulder immediately broke his dismal mental loop. Chin up, she insisted. Standing here as the East faction's supreme selected champions was a complete privilege worth lifting their heads high for. That intense spark rekindled his combat spirit. Rangus nodded profoundly, cursing to incinerate every final drop of his essence today. The pair's stare then fixed on a solitary wolf. Cutting through the strained crowd, They moved closer. Zeke, who emanated an extremely frightening, complete tranquility, perceiving the profound stillness, Rangus scowled. Laika interjected, completely unsettled by his silent aura. Zeke dismissed it with a frigid grin. He was just examining their pitiful power levels. A thunderous yell praising Zeke's wild abilities broke the tension. The abrupt sound entirely startled Rangus, causing him to tumble down. Zeke turned to see two men hurrying over. A faint smile appeared on his face. Things were certainly escalating. The two experienced rivals dashed, overbending with immense admiration as they approached the team. Rick confessed their previous grand confrontation had completely broken and reconstructed their whole battle mentality. Now they solely submitted to absolute power. Zeke just grinned. Character growth wasn't awful. Meanwhile, a distressed Rangus unabashedly embraced Zeke's legs, his spirit still, startled by Rick's jump scare. While prying Rangus off the ground, Zeke's keen stare scanned the arena. Every opponent from the other Dragon Halls emitted 3-star energy. Only East Hall distinguished itself. Exactly. As anticipated, 0 4-star giants had joined the conversation. Yet numerous auras shimmered right on the brink of a breakthrough. His combat-eager blood began simmering. Mid-conversation, an unexpected girl abruptly tackled Laika into a huge unexpected back embrace. Laika immediately recognized Sandy's distinctive grip. Their shrieking reunion entirely disrupted Zeke's sharp concentration. Declining to release, Sandy enthusiastically shouted that it had been forever, boosting her spirits. She fiercely joked about demolishing any tormentors, but Laika merely chuckled, entirely unbothered and relaxed. Celine glanced sideways at the energetic newcomer. Radiant Laika presented her distinguished relative Sandy Typhona, the Typhona chief's successor. The mythical name astonished everyone's jaws. The Typhona clan top tier, one of the unassailable 4 prominent families. Sandy's radiant grin immediately solidified into a lethal stare. Assessing the group, she insisted on explanations. Laika proudly referred to them as her ride-or-die team. Sandy sharply lifted an eyebrow. Was Laika truly asserting these literal nonentities as companions? She harshly revealed the reality, pretending to be pleasant as charming, but these feeble ones drastically lacked the attributes to support an Eldragon successor. Zeke interjected effortlessly. His voice chilling the atmosphere. Strength is demonstrated in blood. Sandy spun around fiercely, demanding his identity. Laika frantically presented Zeke as a competing family head contender. Sandy's keen eyes instantly widened. She cruelly grinned, inquiring if he was the boss's notorious, murmured about, illegitimate offspring. Then releasing a poisonous bomb, she openly ridiculed how a low-tier scoundrel had not perished yet. Zeke's icy grin didn't even twitch. Appalled by the sheer disrespect, Laika urgently confronted Sandy. Sandy sneered at the innocent defense, icily reminding Laika that Zeke was their primary foe. She mercilessly cautioned that being a pushover would ensure getting utterly obliterated by the genuine apex contenders.